This is Gae-yoon, the youngest president of the elite warrior school and the only student to have won every single duel in the academy. When a boy shows up completely beaten up, challenging her to a sparring match, Gae-yoon is surprised. Despite his condition, she sees it as a guaranteed win and accepts the challenge. Everyone headed to the makeshift room where the fight would take place. Gae-yoon, exuding confidence, walked in slowly, radiating power. In a split second, she threw a kick that would have landed on anyone, but somehow the boy managed to dodge it. That one dodge was enough to leave everyone breathless. She began launching attack after attack, but the boy effortlessly dodged each one. Gae-yoon soon realized she couldn't land a single hit on him. Noting that it had been a long time since anyone had evaded her strikes for this long, she proposed a draw. For the best fighter in the school to be unable to touch a beaten-up boy was downright embarrassing. When the boy refused to accept a draw, she became angry and unleashed everything she had. As she closed the distance, she narrowly avoided a dangerous kick that could have cost her the entire fight. The boy didn't stop there. Even though he wasn't at 100%, he fought on equal terms with Gae-yoon, which shocked her. Determined to give it his all, he declared that he would use every last bit of energy left in his body. With lightning speed, he began unleashing a flurry of kicks that she could barely dodge. With his energy running low, he decided to channel everything into one powerful attack. However, the instructor outside recognized the escalating danger and intervened, halting the boy's final move. She was shocked, realizing that if he had been at full strength, she would have lost. She walked away with one question on her mind. Who the hell is that guy? She didn't know him because, in the past, he only used his powers when he had no other choice. Day to day, he was just another regular school kid with one goal, to help his father. Many had already forgotten, but this is the great hero, Song. When planet Earth was attacked by monsters and demons, Song unlocked a power that no one had ever achieved before. Thanks to the power of his planet, Earth, Gae-yoon managed to return to normal. However, to survive in the present day, he works as a dungeon smuggler, illegally entering restricted zones, collecting forbidden items, and delivering them to clients who pay well. He has completed this task 371 times. One day on the job with his boss, Gae-yoon, a client, became furious, insisting he wanted the best warrior and telling the MC to get lost. When the boy called him an old idiot, the client snapped and sent his bodyguard to teach the MC a lesson. The bodyguard was a tank-class fighter, his body trained to the absolute limit. The giant approached the boy and attempted to land a punch, but the boy dodged it effortlessly. Impressed, the giant retaliated with an even harder punch, only to receive a kick straight to the chin that left him stunned. The old man watched in speechless awe as the boy fought. The Gigachad woke up furious, pushing his body to the absolute limit with everything he had. Now, he can take bullets and aerial bombs, walking away without a scratch. The guy has turned into an armored titan. When he attacks, only Jaryong manages to dodge, knowing he can't afford to take a punch from this beast. As he continued to dodge his master, he urged him to wrap it up already. The MC smiled, grabbed a piece of iron, and just as Chris charged at him, Jaryong unleashed an incredible punch that connected squarely with the tank's face, sending him straight to dreamland. The bald guy who had underestimated him now realized that this boy was far stronger than he appeared. As a child, he would watch his father train, captivated by his unique power. Inspired, Jong began to train alongside his father every single day, growing stronger with each passing moment, until he reached the level of power he possesses today. After the confrontation, Dae-yoon informed the bald guy that the price had doubled. The guy glanced at the boy and accepted the new terms on the spot. Meanwhile, the boy was calmly drinking water when he learned that the mission was in the city of Udo, a place overrun by the most dangerous monsters in the world, Imperial Wasps. Some time ago, the government assembled a task force that succeeded in killing the queen. One of the 7 adventurers stole the royal jelly, the substance the wasps used to create a new queen, and fled to the Yggdra forest. Today, he is considered dead. When Jae-won mentioned that this royal jelly could bring someone back from the brink of death and cure any disease, he became excited, realizing it could save his father, who was suffering from an incurable poison that is slowly destroying his body. The MT gathers all his gear and opens the gate to the toughest mission of his life. Yoo Jae-ryong steps into a mountainous area, shielding his eyes from the bright sun. Ever since adhesion dungeons appeared across the world, 2 in Korea have stood out as the largest. One is Judo, a dungeon merged with the volcanic mountain range. The other has fused with the Yggdra jungle, and that is where the boy is preparing to explore. The Yggdra dungeon is located in what used to be Uedo, right in the heart of Seoul. With Uedo at its center, Mappo, Yongsan, and the surrounding areas all fell under its control, and much of this region remains unexplored. While a lot of the area is only D rank, Uedo itself, where the wasp resides, is classified as S rank. This is where the person carrying the jelly attempted to transport it before heading to the meeting point in Barama. Zhao Bai explains that after reaching Barama, the transporter lost contact. He might have died, but that's not the only possibility. Regardless, Zhao Bai Jum just needs to reach the location and recover the royal jelly. Before Yomsai leaves, Zhao Bai stops him and reminds him not to lose focus and just do the job. With a grin, the boy puts on his mask and asks if his boss thinks he would run away. Zhao Bai Xuansat Wan responds that he knows the kid isn't dumb enough for that. Then, his boss adds one more thing to be careful. The royal jelly is priceless, and humans aren't the only ones willing to die for it. After receiving that warning, the boy uses a rope to climb down the cliff and enter the forest. Once he reaches the middle of the woods, he realizes that the entire area can probably smell that strange scent. Suddenly, he looks down and something causes him to freeze in shock and irritation. In the dirt lies a huge footprint. Zhao Baiyang realizes that all kinds of creatures will be drawn in by the jelly's smell. Deeper in the woods, birds suddenly burst into the air as a pointed-eared girl runs through the trees, completely out of breath. She pauses behind a tree for a moment to catch her breath. Her name is Jin Saram, a first-year warrior facing the worst moment of her life. This dungeon trip was supposed to be an easy intermediate exam, but she is frozen with fear. Instead of a simple test, she has encountered a monster that should never have been there. Now she is trying to remain still and quiet, hoping the creature will pass her by. But then a gust of wind blows her way and she confronts the truth she had been avoiding. This exam was supposed to be easy. She only needed to gather as many coins as possible before time ran out. Even though the test was designed to simulate real combat, the area was set to the lowest rank and should have been straightforward. It was beginner training, something every new adventurer should be able to clear. Suddenly, the monster sneaked up behind her, grinning when she finally noticed it. Jin panicked. The monsters here were four-armed giants that swung at her with overwhelming force, and she barely managed to dodge. Running wouldn't work against something that big. She has to choose another option. In that moment, all she can do is hope for a miracle, so she pulls out her bow and grabs 3 arrows. Despite the odds stacked against her, Jin decides to fight. The 3-star Primal Titan begins charging a brutal breath attack. Desperate to stay alive, she fires all 3 arrows, but the monster calmly raises a hand and blocks them with ease. Jin realizes that its hide is tougher than a tank, leaving her chances of success almost zero. Then, the primate swings one of its 4 arms down to the ground, sending wind and rocks flying in every direction. She escapes again with quick movements, and even while airborne, Jin readies another arrow. She knows her arrows can't truly pierce the Titan, but she has no choice. 3 more shots fly out, this time enhanced by the wind. They only scratch the Titan, which doesn't even flinch, staring at it. Jin realizes she never needed to kill it with those shots. She only wanted to lure it closer and make it drop its guard for just 1 second. Now she knocks another arrow, this one filled with fire. Her plan might actually work. When she lands, she pours even more magic into the arrow, as her class allows her to infuse magic into the tips. With everything on the line, Jin steels herself to strike back. Using her Flame Bombardier skill, she fires a blazing shot that rips across the ground. The magic she can infuse into an arrow has almost no limit, so for her final move, she chooses to unleash the biggest explosion possible. The shot connects, and a massive blast illuminates the forest. She gazes at the impact point, hoping to see if the monster is finally defeated. That attack should have killed any monster with a 3-star threat level. But when the smoke clears, Jin is horrified to see that the monster has survived by clinging to 2 trees. It barely escaped and now looks furious, enraged that its prey dared to fight back. Even her strongest move meant nothing if it didn't land cleanly. Her thoughts spiral, and Jin begins to fear that she might die here. Before she can decide to run, the monster drops to the ground and charges straight at her. Jin turns and bolts in the opposite direction, desperately trying to escape as the Titan pursues her with a crazed look, as if it is relishing the hunt. Then, like a miracle, our protagonist suddenly appears and slams his weapon into the Titan. Jin looks up in disbelief, gazing at her savior as if he were a hero. Still airborne, Jeryeong meets the eyes of the girl he just saved. While Jin struggles to process what just happened, the giant takes a hard hit to the chin and staggers, desperately trying to maintain its balance. He lands safely on a tree and thinks that even a clean shot to the chin wasn't enough. Looking down, he notices the beast staring up at him with a vicious glare. He pulls a strange item from his pocket, an adventurer's tool that resembles a weapon. With bait in one hand and the tool in the other, the boy rushes in to bring the beast down. Watching this, Jin is stunned. She never thought anyone would charge at that monster head-on. To her, it looks like he's running straight to his death as the furious titan attacks with both arms at once. Jae-young shouts for her to close her eyes immediately. She doesn't understand why, but he quickly aims the tool at the monster's face. In mere seconds, they are on the brink of a deadly clash where only one can survive. Suddenly, the tool in Jae-young's hand begins to emit a powerful light, prompting him to shut his own eyes. A blinding flash erupts right in front of the monster, illuminating the forest and leaving the titan temporarily blinded. Sai-ram heeds his warning, closing her eyes and raising an arm to shield herself. The monster, unaware of what just occurred, is struck directly in the eyes by the blast of light. It roars in rage as the protagonist lands, believing that the tool has been used up and that it was his last one. The item he used is called a stun light, a tool made from the scales of a creature found in deep ocean dungeons. Its special effect, incapacitate, made it worth the cost, so adventurers loved it. However, because it worked too well, people abused it, leading to many losing their eyesight. As a result, the production of stun lights is now completely banned. Even with her eyes shut, Sai-ram was still affected by the intensity of the flash, so she slowly began to open them again. As Yu Jae-young ran past her with his baton, he told her he had bought her a few seconds, and now she needed to survive on her own. The MC thought that as long as he didn't directly assist an adventurer too much inside the dungeon, he probably wouldn't get reported. He remembers his boss saying that smugglers are like cockroaches to adventurers. Since the reward for turning one in is substantial, one careless move could lead to him being sold out to the government. He had no intention of getting involved any further. However, while running, Jae-young noticed something that made him tense up. Someone was following right behind him. It was the girl from earlier. Realizing she was chasing him, he groaned, unsure of what she wanted. Despite being out of breath, Anisha kept running after the boy who saved her, determined to thank him. But after everything he had learned about avoiding tricks, he made up his mind and burst forward. In an instant, Anisha lost sight of him completely. She froze in confusion, certain he had just been there a moment ago. Then, her guard dropped and a baton slammed into her neck, knocking her back. Jae-young forces her to the ground and calls her an idiot, demanding to know what she was trying to do. Anisha quickly insists that she meant no harm, explaining that she only chased him to thank him for saving her. The protagonist coldly responds, asking if she really expects him to believe that. He's not foolish enough to fall for her story. Then she admits there was more to the situation. She knew he was a smuggler, but she insists she wasn't trying to catch him. Instead, she wanted to hire him. This revelation makes him pause. Noticing the Warrior Academy emblem on her clothes, he lets out a sigh and relaxes slightly. He pulls the baton from around her neck and warns her that he was willing to overlook this, but this is her last chance to stay alive. As he turns to leave, Jae-young states that he has no interest in dealing with a Warrior Academy student. His voice grows even colder as he warns Anisha that if she gets in his way again, he'll bury her for real. Hearing this, she falls silent for a moment. Nevertheless, she doesn't back down. She asserts that smugglers are worth 50 million and hunters must be worth 400 million. Jae-young takes that as an insult and instantly flares up with fury. However, he soon notices something in Anisha's hand, and his entire reaction shifts. She is holding the blood of ankle necklace. Anisha explains that obtaining one would typically require capturing 5 smugglers, totaling over 200 million won. Sweating, she offers it as just the down payment, and promises even more if MC helps her pass the exam. Staring at the necklace, he mutters that she isn't just a spoiled brat, she's insanely rich and totally crazy. Anisha shoots back that whether she's crazy or not doesn't matter. Holding the necklace up again, she insists that what truly matters is that this chance could change his life. Jae-young sighs again, expressing that he anticipated something like this would happen. He then apologizes, claiming that this is Anisha's fault and that he doesn't really need a reason to kill her. This leaves her shaken, and she asks what he means. Suddenly, a huge shadow blocks the light. He looks up and says he already warned her, reminding her that she only had a few seconds. Suddenly, the enraged beast comes crashing down from above, having tracked them after the flash. The monster slams down with all 4 arms, but both of them barely manage to escape. Suddenly, Anisha sees something flying toward her. She catches it and realizes it's the same baton Jae-young was using. He urges her not to just stand there and asks if she remembers the fire attack from earlier. She recalls coating the arrow in flames, and he commands her to do the same with the baton before throwing it back. Anisha panics, saying she's almost out of magic. The protagonist cuts her off, urging her to figure it out as the monster prepares to strike again. He warns her that he can't hold its attention with his bare hands for much longer, so she needs to hurry. Anisha begins pouring magic into the baton, realizing she has less than a quarter of her power left after expending so much in her last attack. While Jae-young fights the Titan, she realizes that her limited magic won't be enough to seriously harm it. For a moment, she considers running while he distracts the monster. Meanwhile, MC fights with all his strength just to stay alive. Annoyed yet determined, he continues to move, drawing the monster's attention onto himself. With perfect speed and aim, the flaming baton flies back to Jae-young, who catches it cleanly. Anisha has used nearly everything she had to throw it and can't believe she's risking so much for one person, thinking she must be crazy. He leaps up, spins the baton, and expresses his disappointment. He tells her that this is nowhere near a quarter of the power she used before, and honestly, it's pathetic. Even so, he insists it should be enough. Full of confidence, he grips the baton and charges at the monster. As the fight reaches its peak, Anisha recalls something that Warrior Academy students hear all the time. Against a monster, an adventurer doesn't win with strength alone. What matters most is timing, and Jae-young demonstrates this perfectly, dodging every attack and waiting for the right opening. The key lies in landing the right hit at the right moment, and when the primate titan misses, it leaves itself wide open. In other words, adventurers should value making every strike count. As she watches the protagonist, Anisha is deeply impressed. After dodging every blow and waiting for the perfect moment, Jae-young swings the baton into the Titan's chin. An explosion erupts, and when the smoke clears, the beast's lower face is completely destroyed. MC's glasses shatter from the impact, but as he realizes the attack was successful and the fight is over, a small smile appears on his face. Then, a memory from Anisha's past resurfaces. As a child, she had just finished playing with her friends and was preparing to head home. A bodyguard was waiting for her with a card to take her back. She says goodbye, while her friends happily chat about meeting again the next day. Anisha overhears them gossiping, claiming she was lucky because she could get anything she wanted. To her, that was completely wrong. Due to who she was, there were many things she could never truly have. Her father led Jinsong Group, the fourth largest company in South Korea, renowned worldwide. The heir of that group married an elf from another world, and from that union came someone unforgettable. That child was Anisha, a half-elf girl with dark hair and a stubborn heart. She admired adventurers more than anyone else, and looked up to them deeply. More than anything, Anisha wanted to become one herself, no matter what she had to sacrifice. Later, a blonde elf tells her that dream is impossible. Anisha lies on the ground, completely worn out, as he remarks that her elven blood is weak and that she is almost human. He tells the person beside him that pushing her any further is wrong and that someone should talk her out of this. Shonyu then responds, saying he isn't forcing her, he is simply supporting her dream of becoming an adventurer. He adds that elven talent isn't necessary for that, and the elf agrees. Compared to an average human, he notes that Anisha does possess decent talent. However, even with that, she's only slightly above average, and all her efforts still won't be rewarded. The blonde elf states that he needs to make one thing clear to Shonyu. His daughter isn't just an ordinary human girl. She will never give up on her own, and she's just as stubborn as her mother, who is the elf's sister. However, he bluntly states that no matter how hard she tries, she will never stand among the true monsters. At best, if she keeps getting back up, she might become fairly capable. Time passes, and Anisha is older now. The elf concludes that with enough effort, she might at least earn praise as an exceptional normal human. However, he believes she was born with other advantages: wealth, status, and bloodline. In his view, those factors will only make her hard work feel pointless. Some limits simply can't be broken. People will mock her out of jealousy, and she may end up completely alone, viewed as nothing more than a spoiled rich girl. Even if Anisha becomes strong, he believes she still won't endure that loneliness for long, because isolation breaks a person. Back in the present, Jae-young has defeated the monster. After everything Anisha just witnessed, she is left speechless. When he lands, the monster's body crashes down beside him. One direct hit to the face had completely destroyed it. He starts walking away with the baton in hand. When something brushes against his ear, he stops and glances over to see Anisha staring at him, as if she has seen a ghost. Looking at his face, she mutters that it's impossible. Her savior is just a high school kid. Jae-young touches his face and realizes what happened, instantly feeling annoyed with himself for slipping up. He recalls Jaehan warning him to be careful with his glasses because they were expensive. Holding the unusual glasses, Yu comments that they look plain and shouldn't cost much. His boss quickly shuts that down. Those glasses block face scans, change your voice, and carry over 4 magic effects. Now in the present, those pricey glasses lie smashed to pieces from Jaehwan's last attack. He covers his face and mutters that everything is going badly, and it's really getting on his nerves. Still trying to process the situation, the girl asks if he's a veteran from the Warrior Academy. Already fed up because he only wanted a simple job, the protagonist bluntly says no. Yu then turns to her, furious, and demands the item she promised him. To his surprise, she hands over the necklace immediately, without arguing. This only reminds him of how wealthy Jin is, so he quickly snatches the jewel before she can examine it any further. With the necklace in hand, Jaryang examines it closely and confirms that it's real. Jin then asks if he needs more money, explaining that even if he doesn't go to the Warrior Academy, adventurer training schools are quite expensive. Before she can offer anything, MC interrupts, stating that he doesn't attend any adventurer school. That shocks her even more, and he tells her that she's got him all wrong. Jaehwan explains that he's never attended any adventurer school, not even close. He goes to a regular school instead. Jin then asks who taught him to fight, to which he replies that no one did. As he walks closer with both hands in his pockets, he calmly adds that he taught himself. This time, Jin becomes annoyed and snaps that there's no way that's true. His movement and timing are far too sharp for someone with no training, so she insists he must be messing with her. Instead of responding politely, Jaehwan suddenly throws something at her and it smacks her right in the face. She catches the card and asks what he just threw. After examining it, Sairome realizes it's a school ID. She pulls the card free and reads it carefully. It's from Dongin Secondary School, and the name on it is Yuhim. Jiawan tells her not to bother remembering it, as his school is just one more ordinary school in the country. After everything she's seen today, the girl is nearly losing it and insists that it's not possible, not willing to let her doubt him. Yu points his baton at her and demands that she hand over proof like a student ID or anything similar. Once she complies, he reads the name Jean Sairome and verifies whether it's authentic. He notices that she is the same age as him and confirms that she really is from the Warrior Academy. For some reason, he slips her ID into his pocket, prompting Jin to immediately ask why. Jaehwan explains that it's simple. She made him an offer. Since she now knows who he is, he needs some insurance before accepting her job. He can't risk her turning on him later. He adds that he works without backup plans and that there's still one more thing he needs to do. The protagonist pulls out his phone, wraps an arm around Jin's shoulders, and drags her into a side hug, leaving her completely flustered. Yu announces that he's taking a selfie with her, warning that if she betrays him, the photo will prove she was tied to a smuggler as well. As they pose, Jin remains frozen in shock, while Jiawan suddenly realizes she may have gotten herself into something serious. With a threatening look, he tells her to smile, and that's when she understands that this boy is far more dangerous than she initially thought. She forces a shaky little laugh and fakes a smile for the camera, but backing out is no longer an option. It's already too late, so MC takes the photo with Jin beside the Titan's corpse. Afterward, he keeps staring at the screen to ensure the picture came out well. Once he's satisfied, he tells Jin it's time to discuss payment and asks what she actually wants done. Still rattled by him, Saxram explains that the job is to collect coins. Jin clarifies that during the 6-hour test, she must gather coins hidden throughout the exam zone. To prove herself as a Warrior Academy student, she needs to locate a box at a designated spot containing a coin inside. She already has one coin, so she only needs one more to pass. Jean then mentions that the last box she needs is nearby, prompting Jaryang to ask where it is. She tells him it's in the ruins of the old Eugene shopping mall. This answer catches him off guard, as if he has just figured something out. He says he understands now, but Jin has no idea what he means. He explains that their meeting wasn't random, as the thing he came for is also in that mall. After a brief explanation of his mission, the girl blurts out that she can't believe he's after the Imperial Wasp. Jaryong quickly corrects her, stating that he's not after the wasp itself, just something it produces, perhaps honey or jelly. He's not entirely certain. He mentions that the jelly emits a strong smell that attracts monsters, which likely explains the primate titan's appearance. However, what matters now is whether she truly needs to go to the mall, or if another coin can be found elsewhere. Looking uneasy, Jin states that the mall is the only place left with a coin. The other groups probably took all the remaining boxes. Hearing this, the protagonist looks at her, and when she mentions the groups, he quietly understands why she was alone. Despite this, Jaryang reassures Jin that it's fine. In fact, it makes things easier for him. He says they'll go in, grab the coin and the jelly, and then get out safely. Just as he's about to name his price, Jin beats him to it and offers 950 million won. She claims that's all the money she has, but the enormous sum instantly reminds him of her wealth. Serum begins to say she can get more if needed, but Yoon interrupts, insisting that it's enough. As he turns toward their destination, he adds that the price increases if things go wrong, but if everything goes smoothly, that amount will suffice. He then asks if she can still run, and she quickly nods in agreement. With that, they break into a sprint through the forest toward the mall. A little behind him, the young woman is already struggling. Out of breath, she watches as Yoon's Riganari runs ahead effortlessly. To her, his speed is unbelievable. Meanwhile, Jae-ryong sighs to himself, realizing he agreed too quickly and should have asked for more since she's obviously wealthy. As they continue to run, Jin calls out, asking if she can pose a question to him. Looking bored, he replies with a casual, "Sure," and she asks if he really learned all of this on his own. He admits that not everything was self-taught, but most of it came from his own training. As they continue moving, Jae-ryong begins to share stories from his past, mentioning that when he was a kid, but before he can finish, he senses danger. Two strange creatures are hunting nearby. They're Gare Raptors, beasts from what used to be Boromadon, and Yo immediately tells Jin to get ready to fight. She stops at once, draws her bow, and prepares to attack. But before Jin can move, MC bursts forward and charges at the monsters himself, despite never having had formal adventurer training. Everything he knows has come from risking his life, but there was one exception. When he was young, he witnessed his father move in a way he never forgot. From that moment, he learned 3 special techniques. Now, closing in with his baton, Jae-ryong uses one of them on the Gare Raptor. The first technique is called the Needle. He uses all his speed and body weight to strike a vital point, landing it perfectly. The move is simple but has been polished through experience, instinct, and raw talent. Even top adventurers haven't fully mastered it, yet Jae-ryong has. As a result, the first monster falls in a single hit. The second beast is only 2-star, so Jen takes it down without much trouble, although she does get a few scratches. After putting away her bow, Sarum expresses that something feels wrong. Gary Raptors typically move in packs of at least 5, which suggests she isn't the only one affected by the royal jelly scent. There are likely monsters scattered throughout the area, and by now, they have reached the edge of the city where the mall stands. Noticing that she's not in great shape, Yo suggests taking a short break before they continue. Returning to the earlier topic, Jean asks if Yo ever had any personal training when he was younger. Yo replies no once again, explaining that he only trained by copying what he observed. Since he had to stay hidden from that person, he was only able to learn a few moves. Since people rarely ask him this, he wants to know why she cares so much. However, instead of answering, Jin becomes seriously frustrated and blurts out that, after everything, she really doesn't like him. Suddenly, she throws something at Jae-ryong, and he catches it without even knowing what it is. When he checks what she threw, MC sees it's a stamina vial, a really pricey one. He looks at Jin and asks if she's seriously giving it to him for free. Jin tells him to drink it already, noting that he's clearly worn out and not at full strength. Instead, he points out the mixed message. She just said she didn't like him, yet now she's handing him a gift. To her shock, he begins putting the vial away. Sarum immediately asks what he thinks he's doing. Jae-ryong insists he's not wasting it now, as he can sell it later for cash, which only makes Sarum angrier. She snaps back that it's expensive for a reason, so he should stop arguing and just use it. However, he calmly replies that he knows exactly what it's worth, and on the black market, it would sell for a significant amount. Jin can only grumble to herself, thinking he's weird and totally impossible, but right now, he's all she's got. Eventually, the protagonist decides they've rested enough and suggests they should move out. As they continue on, Jin remains lost in thought, and he reflects that rich kids really are strange. They act as if money barely matters. As they approach the mall, Jae-ryong states that she already knows the plan, but they should review it one more time. Their mission isn't to fight monsters. Instead, they are going in, taking what they need, and getting out quickly, no matter what awaits them inside. She must follow his lead and remain calm. MC acknowledges that while she may have learned a lot, survival is Jin's expertise, so she just needs to trust him. Despite this, Jin continues to act strangely, leaving her with an unexplainable feeling of unease. Back at the Warrior Academy, she often felt ignored and excluded. Now, for the first time, she is facing danger alongside someone who doesn't look down on her. As Jae-ryong rises, he tells Jin it's time to go. Despite his words, she still feels nervous, aware that real danger lies just ahead. Soon, they arrive at the old shopping mall. The moment they step inside, both of them tense up. A crushing pressure suddenly closes in around them, and Jin asks what it is. Jae-ryong admits he doesn't know either. He's never felt anything like this before. Then they spot torn-up monster bodies ahead, clear proof that something incredibly strong has passed through here. Humans can be much braver than they realize. When they have a reason, they can push through almost anything. What truly breaks them is when reality exceeds their expectations. These monsters don't belong here, and even professional explorers would struggle against them. As they survey the slaughter, they can't even guess what caused it. Jaryong tells Jin to stay focused, sensing that something deadly is nearby. She already knew this trip would be dangerous. Although she admits to feeling shaken, she insists that this is worse than she imagined. But the mission itself hasn't changed. Right after that, she catches movement in the dark. A shape shifts in the shadows and he pulls out his spear. The creature rises. It's a slasher lip, rated around 2 to 3 stars. The protagonist rushes toward it without hesitation. The monster's mouth opens wide, and a huge tongue shoots out at him, but he blocks it with his staff. Suddenly, he realizes something is off. The tongue has wrapped around his weapon. The beast yanks it back, pulling him along with it. Just before it can reel him into its jaws, he releases his grip on the staff. From above, he regains control and drops in with a clean kick that lands perfectly. Jin watches from a distance, waiting for the right moment to help. Jaryong picks up his staff again. Although Jin is rattled that the creature is still alive, he reassures himself that it was all part of the plan. He kept it alive because if anyone else is nearby, its scream will warn him first. She asks who he is trying to warn, and the answer is himself. He wasn't about to sit still and wait. Just then, another person shows up, saying he's had a lot to clean up, which has left him tired. Jin realizes that this newcomer is another explorer. MC remains tense and asks if they know each other. The man replies that the two of them look too inexperienced to be smugglers. Then he notices the crest on Jin's clothes. In an instant, he appears right in front of them, asking if they are from the warrior school. Jin confirms that they are, and he responds that regardless of their team, it's a shame because they are going to die here. Jin is horrified but urges her not to listen. This isn't just any ordinary explorer. He's a villain here to kill and steal the royal jelly. The man claims he wasn't supposed to touch his client's goods without permission, but that only matters if he gets caught. So far, luck has been on his side. He has heard that the target's partner is carrying something valuable. The plan was to ambush them on the way, but things changed. He failed to eliminate them earlier, and although he entered this place, he still hasn't found his target. He suspects the man is hiding in one of the smuggler routes. Hearing this, Jaryong realizes that the smuggling center lost contact because of this man, not the wasp Venom. The one in front of them is responsible for everything that happened before the fight even began. The protagonist can already sense that this enemy is trouble. The man even offers them a painless death if they cooperate, clearly indicating he is on a whole different level from the weirdo they encountered before. MC tells Jin to grab the coins and run, assuring her that he'll hold the man off for a while. After everything this guy has done, there probably aren't many monsters left, so she needs to move quickly. But before he can finish, the enemy attacks, and he immediately yells at her to run and stop hesitating. For his plan and the money, she has to stay alive. When the enemy sees her leave, he becomes annoyed and remarks that splitting up is a bad choice, as staying together would give them better odds. Jaryong, however, doesn't care. He steadies himself and gathers his strength, his eyes sharpening with total focus. He swings the staff with skill and raw force, startling the enemy, who realizes too late that he telegraphed his move. In the next moment, the protagonist's foot slams straight into his face, sending the man flying. However, the protagonist knows it's not over yet. The enemy admits he's impressed. He underestimated them because they were young, but now he's ready to use his gear. Even at that age, MC is already better than most professionals, so he knows he has to get serious. He reassures young Dagon, a gold-class adventurer, by telling him not to worry. It will be over quickly. Meanwhile, someone comments that it wasn't bad at all and adds that the instant noodles turned out great. He offers some to the bald man, but the offer is turned down. Instead, the bald man tells him to sit and wait, since the guy sleeping on the job won't wake up anytime soon. Furious, the bald man expresses his frustration, explaining that he paid a lot for that man, and now he's passed out mid-mission. As he paces around, he reminisces about how he used to be an adventurer. The other man advises him not to be too harsh. The sleeper didn't lose due to weakness. He lost because this type of fight wasn't his specialty. Adventurers face challenges beyond just battling monsters. That man was likely trained to hunt and explore, not to engage in hand-to-hand combat with another human. Given his lack of experience in that area, it makes sense that he would lose to a smuggler. The bald man counters by stating that he has heard of plenty of adventurers fighting each other, and that part is indeed true. The stronger they become, the greater the rewards, and sooner or later, fights break out. Sometimes even teammates become greedy enough to betray one another. The bald man can't believe that adventurers would kill each other, but there's usually no one around to intervene, and inside the dungeon, there are no rules. Just say a monster killed him, and that's all it takes. No alibi needed. The higher an adventurer climbs, the more prepared they must be to face others in battle. But this case was different. The sleeper's class simply wasn't high enough, which is why he ended up flat on the ground. Picking a fight with a partner? That's almost cute. If he got caught, then the fight must have happened outside the dungeon. It likely occurred without equipment, although the bald man doesn't understand what that entails. Equipment refers to the weapons and armor an adventurer brings into a dungeon, including even the smallest items. With that gear, even the sleeping guy could have performed better. It matters that much. Equipment constitutes half an adventurer's fighting power. Meanwhile, Jerry Young realizes the enemy didn't dodge. His hit landed clean and hard, right on target. But the blade's defense is high. As the protagonist contemplates his next move, the enemy warns him not to lose focus. The next strike comes swiftly, and he barely manages to block it with his staff. Allowing his mind to wander in a fight like this is perilous. It disrespects both his opponent and his own life, which could end in an instant. The man seizes the opportunity and delivers a powerful kick to Jerry Young's stomach. The impact is brutal, sending Jerry Young flying several meters. Just before he crashes into anything, he digs his feet into the floor and halts his momentum. The moment he steadied himself, the weirdo was back on him, swinging his blade repeatedly. He couldn't block every hit, and a few cuts slipped through, one even slicing his cheek. Now feeling in control, the weirdo mocked him, challenging him to fight like before, if he really could. But that wasn't possible. The shadow jacket was S-rank armor, and the weirdo was wearing one. It burned the user's blood to enhance defense against physical attacks, and also boosted strength. At that moment, he was fighting in berserker mode. Finding an opening would be tough, but not impossible. However, one bad counterattack could lead to his demise. The fight continued, and the weirdo was completely out of control. He suddenly slashed at stomach level, causing the boy to flinch. Then, laughing, he remarked that the boy had lasted longer than expected. In response, the boy did something unexpected. He asked if today was some kind of special day and took off his own jacket. Getting back up, he remarked that he actually liked the weirdo's jacket. Despite appearances, the guy wasn't as strong as he seemed. His imposing aura had frightened him. But if this was all he could manage against an unarmed student, then he was just a weak fighter hiding behind his gear. The boy added that if he had a jacket like that, things would be different. That crushed the weirdo's pride, and he began yelling that the brat would pay for speaking like that. Jaryong understood that he wasn't the one who needed to rush. His opponent still had to win, find Sarum, and kill her. If the fight dragged on, the advantage remained with him. That would make the weirdo lose patience, and the protagonist was aware of it. With his mind set on ending this quickly, the weirdo charged in a fit of rage. The boy braced himself as their weapons clashed, an aura bursting from both sides. He had learned this technique just by watching when he was little. This was the second technique. A blue aura vortex formed between them. Lacking enough raw power, he used the enemy's force against him to create an attack he couldn't execute alone. The move, which he still hadn't mastered, was called Swell, and its power was brutal. That one strike hit him like a truck, and the impact exploded outward. Afterwards, he had to lean on his staff for support. The technique had damaged his insides and taken a huge toll on him. He never thought he would use that in a real fight, and to think a professional adventurer could be this straightforward, just charging straight ahead. He told the weirdo to give up because his time was up. Instead, the weirdo pulled out a dagger and told him to shut his mouth. His hands shook as if he were scared, but then he suddenly drove the blade into his own chest. The boy didn't see that coming, but the weirdo made one thing clear. No matter what, he'd kill that brat. Meanwhile, on the 5th floor of the department store, Siram had reached her destination. There, she found a box. She placed her hand on the blue circle, and the box verified both her ID number and her identity. Now that she had found it, all she needed to do was go back. Suddenly, she felt the air change. She turned to check behind her. Sairam recalled Jerry Young telling her to run and stay safe, insisting that was the way to get the money. However, she now believed that running away wouldn't change anything. It took all her strength to hold on to those words. All she could picture was the weirdo's face. He wouldn't have picked that fight without some way out, right? As she weighed her choices, she recalled how much he loved bullying people at school. It was one of his greatest pleasures. He truly was a genius. Since he was young, he believed life would always be easy for him, as his talents seemed to guarantee that. Ruling over kids his age only reinforced this belief. However, there was one thing that hadn't gone his way. He had been rejected by the warrior school. To make himself feel better, he convinced himself that it had to be politics money beating talent. That was the only answer he would accept, because if the decision had been based solely on skill, there was no way they would have turned him down. In the endurance test, he had ranked first. Compared to other kids, he wasn't just gifted. He was far above them once again, placing near the top, and nobody in class was surprised. Still, he enjoyed being the one everyone talked about. Now, they faced the final task before graduation. After the ceremony, someone approached him. It was the headmaster who congratulated him, saying he would make a fine adventurer. Then came a warning: don't get arrogant and never stop moving forward. He looked down on the man, thinking he was a washed-up loser stuck in a dull job. He swore he would rise so high that people like the headmaster could only dream of it. Now he found himself on the dungeon floor, shaking in fear. The adventurer who had saved him explained that he rushed over because the situation felt dangerous, but he hadn't expected the monster to be this weak. Yet that same weak monster had wiped out his entire team. Reality was nothing like he had imagined. The adventurer gave him a look he recognized all too well, the same look he had always given to others. In that moment, he understood that the old man's words hadn't been mere advice. They were a source of comfort for what his future would truly hold. He realized he wasn't one of the special few. He was simply better than average. The ordinary people admired him, but he was only slightly above them. The jacket he wore had been made from a living vampire, and he was now forcing all its blood into his heart. That was the price he had to pay to kill the boy. The boy asked if he was really sure, as that trick seemed like it would wreck him later, but the weirdo charged anyway. The collision hit hard. Even after transforming, he hadn't gotten much faster. The real change was how terrifying he looked. His attacks were heavy and wild, and to the boy's shock, his arm began to stretch. After everything else that had happened today, this was yet another surprise. Blood dripped onto the floor. The weirdo stared at his target, who was now breathing hard and trapped in a worn-down guard. Despite this, he somehow managed to block the attack. The weirdo praised his quick reactions and talent, then asked why someone like him had chosen to become a smuggler. The boy was confused by the question. He opened his mouth and asked what was behind the sudden praise. Whatever he did with his life was none of the weirdo's business. Nevertheless, the weirdo thanked him, revealing that thanks to the boy, he would finally get the chance to crush someone truly talented. Thrilled, he set out to make that dream a reality, but the boy wasn't about to make it easy. Despite all the damage, his body still moved effortlessly, and seeing that only fueled the weirdo's excitement as he urged him to display even more talent. The boy understood that this ugly form couldn't last much longer. If blood was the fuel, there had to be a limit. He could push him to burn even more blood and force him to use the needle, but the weirdo had already anticipated that. In his mind, it was too late for the boy. He swung again, but then a fiery blast hit his shoulder out of nowhere. The boy turned to see what had happened. His friend had returned to help him. He smiled at her, clearly surprised by her support. She never listens to him, but sometimes that side of her is quite moving. With the weirdo in range, he struck again with the staff. Soon, the area was covered in debris, and a thin haze hung in the air. The weirdo's body lay on the ground, though they still couldn't tell if he was really dead. The boy didn't believe that was enough to finish him off, and reassured her not to worry about it. Holding up a picture of the weirdo, he said the guy probably wouldn't seek revenge. Doing that could ruin his whole career, but for now, that should be enough. Picking up his staff, he asked if she had already forgotten. He saved her life, so she owed him one. That made it 2 times now. Once at the start, and again when she chose to follow him. But since he's so generous, he'll count it as just 1. Annoyed, she asked if saying sorry would really hurt that much. In the parking lot, everything was wrecked. A golden light shone up through a hole in the ground, and it seemed like something worth checking out. They headed down the stairs toward the scene. As they approached, they saw a body on the floor with a briefcase resting in its lap, emanating a golden glow. He walked up carefully and then shut his eyes for a moment, as if paying his respects. Then he looked at her and reminded her that he had already warned her about the kinds of things she would see, but she had followed him anyway. Since they were already there, they decided to open the briefcase. He placed his hands on it and began to lift it open. The smell was almost impossible to describe. It was sweet and strangely tempting, as if it wanted anyone who inhaled it to stop thinking. Left out in the open like this, it was likely attracting monsters. Glancing at the item beside it, he wondered if the bag also contained royal jelly. His instincts urged him to leave quickly, as lingering could lead to trouble. They hurried back to the first floor, only to find that the murderer's body was gone. If he was still alive, he would have escaped. Then, a scream rang out. He shouted for them to wait, insisting he remembered every one of their faces. From that moment on, he vowed to do everything he could to ruin them and make them regret what they did that day. Burning with hate, the weirdo ran off, only to discover that life had one more surprise in store for him. A starving monster appeared right in front of him, leaping with its jaws wide open. This was not the ending he had anticipated. With no time to react, he was devoured by the monster instead. His revenge would have to wait for another life. Not even the kids who spared him thought karma would strike that quickly. Figuring it was time to leave, they headed out the back. After walking for a while, he felt they were finally safe. He then asked about her test, learned she still had time, and held out his hand to say goodbye. He told her he was glad they had met. Their time together had served its purpose, and she gave him a genuine, honest smile. They shook hands, both satisfied with what they had accomplished. As they parted, he reminded her to keep everything a secret, send the payment, and be careful if she didn't want to run into him again. Before leaving, she asked if they could meet again someday. Cabalon noticed some trash on the ground and then looked over with interest. The boy had returned, and his ripped clothes made it clear he had been through a lot. Now, they decided to check the familiar golden glow that spilled out once again. If this ever became public, it would be worth enough to buy a few buildings. He praised the boy for his work and assured him that the payment would be sent soon. Then, as he put out his cigarette, he took another look at Yu Chaoyang, who seemed distracted. Cabalon Ho asked him what was wrong. Was he bothered by the adventurer who had died fighting him? That man had passed away afterward, and it wasn't something Capalanjo should feel guilty about. So, he asked if anything else had happened down there. The boy brushed it off, saying it was nothing, and telling him to stop asking. He then looked at the briefcase and asked if he could keep what was left, since it didn't seem to be royal jelly. Cabalanjo agreed, stating that anything outside the target item belonged to the smuggler. That was the rule. He just wanted to know which kid was supposed to eat it. It could bring someone back from the brink of death, but that wasn't its only use. It could also raise a person's limits and enhance their natural talent. The details remained unclear, but it only worked on those who weren't adults yet, ensuring it wouldn't be wasted on someone older. It was likely intended for a student from the warrior school. Yehu Jiryang announced he was heading out, and Cabalanjo wished him luck. She also asked him to greet her father if he had the chance. The boy assured her he would. Lately, things hadn't been going well for him. As he stepped outside, he gazed at the evening sky, reflecting on the warrior school and the words the girl had shared with him. He asked her directly if she was interested in him, but she replied that she was serious about her goals. The entrance exam was scheduled for winter, and only a handful would be accepted. However, she encouraged him, saying he had a real shot and should go for it. After all, no adventurer can clear a dungeon alone, no matter how strong they are. The challenges within dungeons are too great for one person to handle alone. That's why teams are essential. Individuals with diverse skills collaborate, support one another's weaknesses, and become stronger together. This is how dungeons are explored. He inquired whether the school's political groups simply battled against one another. She told him that if it were that simple, nobody would be worried. Their class had 2 factions, each led by one of the top 3 students. He asked if she belonged to either faction, and she replied, no. The teachers don't intervene because students are expected to form their own teams. She understood what he meant, that this was happening because she wasn't strong enough. She also accepted that she would never be a top student. Still, she felt she should have been able to join some team, even one associated with a faction. However, one faction leader clearly disliked her. Although she never voiced it, that leader consistently pushed her away from everyone else. Garion asked if she had stolen that girl's boyfriend, but that wasn't the case. Either way, she had managed alone so far, yet she knew she wouldn't survive the coming years like that. That's why she wanted to hire Garion. With his skills, or really just with him by her side, she believed she might have a chance at survival. As she contemplated this, she glanced at the medicine on the counter. She really was a strange girl. After a rough day, she let out a tired sigh. At last, she reached her destination and announced herself at the 12th dungeon barrier in Gangnam. While waiting, she reflected on the boy she had met. Before they parted, he said he had heard her out and wished her luck. She figured he probably wouldn't bring it up again. Just then, someone informed her that she wasn't late. It was Kang, the instructor in charge of Hamahan combat training. She asked if something had happened since she still had time. He replied that there had been a problem. Monsters not typically found in that area had appeared. While no one had died, some students claimed they couldn't finish the test and asked for help. Those students had been in the same area where she found the coin. He looked at her and asked if she was having trouble too. Nervously, she replied no. He accepted her answer without comment and then told her to stay behind him. Right away, she felt a terrifying presence, and when she looked, her fear intensified. It was another monster, like the one that had eaten the weirdo, but this one was much bigger. The appearance of a titan ape in that location was highly unusual, as they typically do not inhabit areas nearby. Something may have drawn it in, and she quickly guessed what it was, the same scent she had noticed before. The instructor told Sareem once again to stay behind him, and she apologized. That monster wanted nothing more than to devour them. Every instructor at this school had once been an adventurer. Some quit because old injuries finally caught up with them, which is how outsiders think of them. But one punch from that instructor was enough to crush the Titan. The blow forced him down, and flames raced up his arm. The moment the fire reached its peak, the monster was blown apart, its body collapsing to the ground. In their prime, these instructors had been rankers. Even after its demise, the monster's head continued to explode. His prosthetic was ruined, and he told the girl she was lucky he had come. Otherwise, this could have ended very badly. Even so, he placed a hand on her shoulder, reminding her that the important thing was that she was safe. Now it was time to head somewhere secure. People often forget that the instructors there are warriors too. Back at school, they discussed the students who had called for rescue. The students were fortunate to get a chance to retake the test. He called them weaklings, and while they were talking, he mentioned that one of them had just arrived. The one-armed man looked at her and instructed her to go inside and wait. He said he would make sure everyone was accounted for, and she should check the count and change into her uniform. She definitely felt safer now. A girl reassured her, saying she knew she'd be fine. At least her method was quick. That feigned concern came from Anisha, who claimed she had been genuinely worried about her classmate. She replied that she never expected Anisha to worry about her. Maintaining the act, Anisha claimed it wasn't her speaking, but her sister. This all began 6 years earlier when Zeke, Sairam's uncle, told her she needed to increase her output. He emphasized that she had to pay attention and stay focused, but that required more effort than she could manage. He concluded the training, stating that it was enough for now. He noted that she had improved since their last session, though not by much. Just then, she heard cheering nearby. Worn out, she turned to see her sister, who was displaying far more talent. Anisha had easily mastered the technique. She didn't even appear to be a hybrid, and her control over magic surpassed that of many purebloods. He called her cousin a genius and warned that if she continued down this path, she would always live in Anisha's shadow, with constant comparisons being the least of her problems. He also advised her to be careful, as the girl seemed cruel. Still acting innocent, Anisha replied that she didn't understand. Why did nobody want to be on the same team as her? Before she could respond, Anisha interrupted, suggesting that if she really wanted to know, she should just team up with her. However, that wouldn't work, as they both filled the same role, healing magical damage from a distance. Having two people perform the same job made no sense. That was a problem for others, not for her. Still, she reassured everyone that there was no reason to worry, as there would probably be another test. She confidently stated that she didn't care about the test because she had already passed. Anisha expressed her admiration, noting that her sister must have worked hard, but cautioned her not to push herself too much, reminding her that she would be the one to inherit it eventually. That brief conversation left her feeling furious. What Anisha truly wanted was for her to give up. Later that night, the door suddenly swung open. Yugari Young rushed in, clearly shaken. The patient's guardian had arrived and immediately asked if something had happened. Sadly, his father had worsened again. The doctors couldn't fully explain it. His condition was incredibly rare, possibly unique in the entire world. There was no medical record of anyone surviving dragon blood poisoning. Yugari Young already knew the truth. All they could do was ease his father's pain, but they couldn't cure him. Even that had become a problem, as the ingredients for the pain medicine were running short. At this stage, the only thing that could help was milk from an extremely dangerous monster known as the Flying Tiger, classified as a 5-star threat. He claimed he had money, but the doctor made it clear that the issue wasn't about money. A new potion had become popular among adventurers, one that significantly boosted strength for an extended period, even in small amounts. One of its key ingredients was that monster's milk. It used to be something you could buy if you had cash, as people thought it was mostly useless. However, now companies and adventurers were purchasing huge amounts of it. Jia Young becomes angry, realizing they don't even have a small supply of the medicine for someone who is dying. But the doctor says that's not the real problem. The issue is the dosage. What his father needs is enough material to create 10 of those strength potions. If more patients required it, perhaps the government would intervene. However, since his father is the only known case, that won't happen. They promised to do what they could, but without that ingredient, there's almost nothing left to try. After hearing this, MC sits on a bench, lost in thought as his life continues to get harder. He pulls out his phone and makes a call to the girl he met earlier. Xiao Beiyong asks if it's too late, but she assures him that it's fine. He gets straight to the point, explaining that he doesn't have many choices left and is ready to accept her offer. She listens attentively and then asks if he has any conditions. After hearing him out, she responds that she'll check on it and that it might actually work. He can hardly believe it, but she confirms that she can help. Her company produces the potion, and since he only needs a small amount, it's definitely possible to get it done. He never expected that answer, but he feels relieved. They make a verbal agreement, and she also reminds him to prepare for the entrance exam. After all, there is no downside to preparing early. The next day, Xiao Beiyong arrives at the company headquarters and notes that he came earlier than expected. As he approaches, she asks how he's feeling, and he replies that he's okay. The protagonist asks what they're doing there, and she tells him they're going to test his potential. She explains that the world has changed significantly. In the past, a normal human could typically only reach D rank, while achieving C rank meant you were essentially a genius. Anything above B rank goes beyond normal human limits. Even without considering magic, explorers must achieve at least C rank in 5 categories. To enter warrior school, a B rank in at least 3 categories is required. Xiao Beiyong asks if this is merely a physical test. She explains that that's how they test kids, but after puberty, it becomes more complicated. He asks what makes it different, and once he's put into a strange suit, he begins to understand. Now he sees why the process is more challenging. In hindsight, he should have realized it when she first asked how he felt. Then he sees what he's up against, a battle robot. Since he's already here, Xiao Beiyong decides to give it everything he's got. He wants to discover his true limits, so he prepares to fight the robot. Blue light begins to shine from the dummy, and smoke rises as it powers up. The girl watches, clearly impressed. Another woman beside her remarks that he's gutsy, noting that most people freeze when they see the golem. This woman is Zheng, a golem expert, and she is intrigued by the boy attempting to transfer. Sairam gives a quiet smile, aware that this isn't the whole story. After setting down her coffee cup, she prepares for the aptitude test to begin. The golem shifts into motion and readies itself to attack. Xiao Beiyong shows no signs of fear. Sairam explains that this test is typically conducted around the 6th or 7th year, and the suit is designed to collect precise data. This approach allows them to push the body to its limits in various areas. Even so, it's difficult to determine if someone is truly gifted or simply someone who has trained for a long time. She already knows that Xiao Beiyong is physically strong, so pushing him to his limits won't be easy. Nevertheless, he should be getting tired by now. When the other woman calls out to Sairam, she wonders if he is truly the same boy who failed a special school entrance exam. Her curiosity is genuine. With talent like his, he must have encountered a significant setback. Even at lower settings, that model is typically reserved for training professionals. After dodging a few attacks, MC reads the pattern and finds an opportunity to strike. His skill is extraordinary. Based solely on instinct, he's already surpassing the average professional. Saruman asks for the measurement results, but the answer isn't straightforward. Only he has yet to reach his limit. They need to raise the difficulty, but moving it up by 1 or 2 levels won't be sufficient. It has to be pushed all the way to maximum power. Zheng asks Sairam if he understands the risk involved. Doing this to someone unregistered is illegal, but without taking that step, they won't be able to determine his true ceiling. Sairam begins to consider other options. Just then, as she steps inside, someone voices a complaint, saying this isn't what he's paid for. Startled, she turns to see who has entered. It's Director Zeke, who asserts that no one is allowed to use the lab without reporting their reason. Initially, Sairam is surprised to see her uncle. She didn't expect him to be there on a Sunday. He warns her that there better be a good reason for risking arrest. Sairam insists that it's all on her, explaining that she was the one who asked for this. Zeke presses her further, questioning whether that's really true or if she's just covering for an employee. He reminds her that this place belongs to her father, not to her, so she can't simply claim responsibility whenever she wants. The rumors about the director are true. He's her mother's brother, and he has always treated her coldly, even though she has done nothing wrong. Since it's the weekend, other adventurers associated with the company are using the place as well. He continues his lecture until Jaryong speaks through the intercom, asking if something is wrong up there. Zeke questions who that is and whether he's worth the trouble. An employee responds that he is Sairam's friend. She explains that he failed his entrance exams and lost his potential registration, which is why he came here for help. Since the process is expensive, she only wanted to assist a friend who couldn't pay. Zeke looks at the battered golem and thinks for a moment before saying that he'll handle it himself. The employee asks what Zeke means by that. Zeke explains that the golem wasn't sufficient and that safe mode can't be turned off, so he plans to go down there and test this friend himself. Jaryong remains uncertain about what's happening, but it's not unusual for adventurers to clash when someone is trying to measure another person's limits. In this case, however, the opponent facing Zeke is on a completely different level. Zeke states he'll skip the introductions because he doesn't have time to waste. Immediately, he realizes this guy is definitely not normal. Although he has no idea who he's about to fight, every instinct in his body screams danger. Zeke tells him to come at him. The strange man from earlier had been his first fight, but this situation feels different. No matter how he looks at it, he doesn't feel like he can beat this opponent. Even so, when he's told to attack, he begins to move forward. He doesn't need to worry about Zeke getting hurt. Jaryong begins to work out his plan. He draws in his aura and finally charges forward. Zeke, however, remains completely still, simply waiting. Looks can be deceiving. Zeke is the 7th strongest ranker in Korea, a white-class adventurer. Despite not finding a single opening, the protagonist refuses to give up. If there isn't an opening, he'll create one. His plan is simple. The moment Zeke dodges, he'll follow up with a strike from behind. He intends to use that dodge to create his opportunity, but Zeke manages to catch the staff with one hand. That was not the outcome Jaryong had hoped for. Zeke proved to be far stronger than he had imagined, and even Zeke remarked that the kid was more reckless than he expected. Then, with MC right in front of him, Zeke delivered a devastating kick, sending him flying into the wall. Still, one thing doesn't make sense to Zeke. Did Jaryong attack like that because he knew it was a test, or did he genuinely believe it could work? Either way, Zeke considers it a foolish move. He kicks the staff back to the protagonist with his foot. The boy is still conscious, but he has lost his only weapon for a moment, which puts MC on even higher alert. Then, Zeke returns the staff to him. Until now, Zeke has been going easy on the boy's poor choices. But with one more mistake, Zeke warns that he will make sure Jaryong regrets ever becoming an adventurer. Zeke sets his feet and takes an attacking stance. Although Jaryong doesn't understand the source of Zeke's personal hostility, he refuses to let it affect him. He charges in once more to attack. Zeke anticipates the same pattern as before, as the approach appears similar. However, Jaryong suddenly plants one foot firmly, instantly capturing Zeke's attention. 2 attacks are coming at once. The long-range strike was intended to catch him off guard, but even that isn't sufficient. The protagonist realizes that this guy still isn't satisfied, which is fine because he's only getting started. His staff now shines bright blue as he prepares a more powerful attack. Even Zeke remains uncertain about what he'll do next. Another series of attacks comes rushing in, letting out some aura. Zeke admits it's not bad. He tightens his fists and blocks every attack that comes his way. From above, the employee watches in shock, realizing it looks less like a test and more like a fight between 2 professionals. Given the skill on display, it's hard to believe this boy still hasn't gotten into any school. However, he isn't good at everything. Shamara explains what she means, and the employee mentions that he has one significant weakness holding him back. In that area, she adds, Samram is much better than he is, which makes Samram wonder what that weakness could be. From where she stands, Shamaram appears to be keeping up with Zeke, and now she really wants to know what's wrong with him. The MC barely slips past a blow, as that punch nearly lands squarely on his exposed face. The employee begins to watch with genuine concern. Now, Jaryong has lost his edge and is getting hit repeatedly. He's in terrible pain and can't react quickly enough to defend himself, yet he still forces himself to fight back. With one swing of the staff, he finally drives Zeke away. Zeke notes that he managed to keep control of his staff at the last second, and that's true, because right after that, his fist slams into the protagonist's stomach, sending him crashing into the wall once again. The director is incredible, and Samram can tell he's still holding back. She watches closely as Zeke advises Jaryong not to dwell on losing. It was going to happen anyway. What bothers him is how pitiful MC's path to that loss appears. He doesn't even have the basics. The employee agrees, noting that while MC's talent and reflexes are amazing, his foundation is lacking. It's as if he's never trained a day in his life. Shogain feels let down. If Jaryong had learned the basics early on, his talent could have gone much farther. Sarome recalls that he once said no one ever taught him. Zeke mentions he has met plenty of people like that. Many gifted individuals never refine their abilities. However, Sarome knows the protagonist isn't one of them. Zeke acknowledges this much, but then tells him to quit. If someone trusts talent alone this week, he'll end up dead. MC gets back up and snaps that Zeke has it all wrong. Zeke has been talking as if MC is some lazy fool, and it's really getting on his nerves. This catches Zeke off guard. His last hit was supposed to finish it. Jaryong then adds that he doesn't care how it ends. He wants one more round, and this time he'll demonstrate the results of his hard work. The employee questions what is wrong with the two of them, finding it amusing that they still want to fight when they already have enough data to assess his potential. Even Sarome intervenes, stating that there is no need to continue. He can stop here and review the results. Zeke insists that whatever he is planning won't change anything. He even assumes the boy is simply seeking his approval, but that's not the case. Jaryong is filled with rage, and at this moment, he wants nothing more than to punch that smug elf in the face. No one taught him anything, so he had to figure it all out on his own. Still, it wasn't hopeless. He was born with talent, which allowed him to cover aspects that the basics should have taught him. On top of that, he had plenty of real battle experience, enabling him to move however he needed. He improved quickly, but he never considered himself above anyone else. In fact, he often felt let down by so-called prodigies who turned out to be weaker than him. But Zeke is different. Jerry Yang wants to defeat that elf, yet he knows he is up against a monster far beyond his capabilities. Then, he notices the aura radiating from Zeke, and now the elf is taking him seriously. The moment he confronts someone he perceives as a true wall, his blood begins to boil. Observing the scene, the employee calls it insane and wonders why the director is getting involved as well. Sarmiel immediately senses the shift. His base has changed, and his stance now puts more weight forward. These two aren't fighting like they did before. Jerry Yang exhales calmly, steadies himself, and attacks once more. This time will be different. His opening strike comes in with force. Zeke avoids the attack, but the edge still nicks his cheek. Even the employee can't believe what she's witnessing. Jerry Yang's entire approach has shifted. Despite this, Zeke continues to slip past every strike. Though the attacks are still rough and basic compared to before, the openings have disappeared. Whoever taught him that, or whatever he learned, is incredible. Right now, the protagonist only wants to defeat this elf. He reflects on the person he admired as a child, copying everything that man did to the best of his ability. Tired of dodging, Zeke grabs the staff with one hand and launches a counterattack. MC barely manages to block the attack. When he was little, Jerry Yang used to mimic him with pure excitement. Now, he faces the strongest enemy he has ever encountered, and Zeke clearly wants to crush him. Zeke had found the little boy's efforts interesting, but this time, he lands a blow. Back then, that man had looked at the tiny kid with genuine interest. Zeke swings again, but Jerry Yang barely slips past the blow. He whips his staff around for a counter, fully trusting his skill. Long ago, that man had simply patted his head and regarded him with admiration. That strike would have been devastating if it had landed. Zeke has to jump. The moment he lands, there should be an opening. He knows that if he attacks then, he won't be able to dodge. Still, he's prepared to give the boy what he's been pursuing throughout this entire fight. With dodging off the table, Zeke charges straight at him. The others can only stare, stunned by what they are witnessing as smoke spreads through the arena. That was the final exchange. If Jerry Yang hadn't used that strange staff technique, Zeke would have undoubtedly won if the fight had continued. Zeke questions whether that was the protagonist's pride speaking. MC smiles and replies that it is not. That's all he knew, everything he had managed to memorize. In the end, he only ended up getting beaten even worse. Still, Zeke insists it wasn't bad at all. He isn't very popular with those around him because he's a pain to deal with, but no one can really question his judgment. His ability is the real deal. He holds a hand over Jerry Yang's face and begins to use his power. The aura slowly rises around them. When his niece expresses concern, Zeke reassures her, saying the boy will be fine. He has already healed him. He just wants to confirm if the boy's name is Yuju. Zeke is one of the top 10 rankers in the country, and even he didn't expect to encounter something like this today. Who would have guessed he would meet that man's son here? After all, Zeke is Korea's best healer. As the sun finally begins to set, the atmosphere shifts. Someone grumbles that if Zeke was going to be late, he could have at least sent a message. They could have had coffee and relaxed. But now they'll be late to the briefing again. Whenever that happens, everyone blames him. Zeke simply replies that something came up and took longer than he expected. The young man mentions that he heard Zeke was dueling some kid, but with this much delay, it seems like the match turned into several rounds. As he takes a closer look, he freezes. He notices a small mark on Zeke's cheek. The longer he stares, the more shocked he becomes, which piques Zeke's curiosity. He asks if the mark is really a cut. Zeke, already annoyed, responds by asking what else it could be. The young man still can't believe it. Then he realizes that the boy must be ready for school, maybe around 16. Zeke corrects him, saying the boy is actually 17 and plans to try for the warrior school during winter admissions. That route is real, but no one has taken it in the last 3 years. Still, he definitely has a shot. Cutting Zeke's cheek isn't easy. This new generation is getting scarier and scarier. Zeke believes that comparing anyone to elves is unfair, and he's certain the boy isn't on the same level as the young man either. Kang disagrees. As a rank 19 Black Class Explorer and the leader of the NYX attack squad, he believes he still has the edge over Jerry Yang in both talent and experience. At just 21 years old, he finished school only a year and a half ago. Zeke lets out a sigh after hearing this. He mentions that he hadn't seen that car before, and the young man replies that he usually doesn't spend much, but he decided to treat himself this time. Meanwhile, the protagonist is still lying on a stretcher. After a while, he finally sits up, checks his hands, and realizes that every wound has vanished. More than that, he doesn't feel any pain at all. The girl says he's finally awake and asks what he was thinking. Did he really believe he could win? Jerry Yang replies that wasn't the point. He was just really mad, and the other guy started it. Even she doesn't understand why her uncle wanted to fight him. MC then asks if they are actually related, and Jerry confirms that he is her uncle from her mother's side. When he falls silent, she becomes curious. Jerry Young brushes it off, saying it's nothing, but then adds that they seem close, judging by how Zeke treats her. Although she doesn't understand how he reached that conclusion, he insists that it's obvious to him. He feels the concern of an uncle worried that some stranger might be messing with his niece. She disagrees, stating that Zeke isn't really warm like that. If anything, he's very strict. Just then, a staff member enters and notices that he is already awake. She asks if anything hurts, and the protagonist replies that his body feels fine. She responds that this makes sense, as Zeke's healing can even fix old injuries. Although it may not appear so, the director is the best healer in the country. This revelation surprises Jerry Young. Despite his incredible strength, fighting isn't even his main job. MC smiles at this revelation. Regardless, she's relieved that he's okay, and she already has the results. Sankaram shares that the results are actually amazing: an A in stamina and agility, a B in strength and endurance, and a C in intelligence. Looking over the data, Jerry Young questions whether it's truly impressive. Ram snaps at him to be quiet, and a staff member wonders if Jerry is actually ready for school. To become a high-level explorer, one needs at least a few B-rank stats, and those stats must also be balanced. Being fast means nothing if your stamina is poor, and having great strength is pointless if you can't move effectively. She explains that most people only possess C-rank abilities, but having more than one strong stat can change everything. Having a C or higher in strength, stamina, and agility occurs in only one person out of 10,000. If those stats increase even further, the odds drop to about 1 in 1.5 million, placing him near the top. Jerry Young doesn't just have a B in strength, he has an A in both stamina and agility. He's not only balanced, he's far above average. Even as a first year, he'd be on the same level as that monster. Then she asks if he wants to hear something interesting. The person he just fought doesn't have a single stat above A. Stats only reflect total potential and do not equate to real combat ability. Training creates the real gap, but that's still not the whole story. There are qualities no test can measure, such as fighting spirit and genuine field experience. It might sound harsh, but she has witnessed many explorers compensate for their weaknesses through sheer grit. Ram blushes, realizing that the comment was directed at her. After hearing everything, Jerry Young expresses his gratitude. He isn't upset or disappointed, he simply doesn't fully understand yet. Compared to someone he knows, he feels he is still way behind. The staff member is surprised that he knows someone like that, as it's quite rare. Whoever it is must be famous, and he admits that's somewhat true. Ram says they are done for today and can meet again next week. However, since they are already here, the staff member suggests they stop by the medicine production department. The girl hesitates, concerned that her uncle might be upset. The staff member insists that the director has already approved it. Ram can't believe what he's hearing and asks if the director really said that before leaving. Apparently, the order was straightforward. Once the boy woke up, he was to be taken to the equipment workshop. He also insisted that everyone should treat the boy as their guest, even if it meant crafting a custom weapon at any cost. Ram is stunned. Top-tier gear is every adventurer's dream, even for someone as gifted as he is. Without good gear, one's strength cannot reach its full potential. As an explorer becomes stronger, they require equipment that can keep up with their growth. Despite hearing all this, he still doesn't understand what's happening. He wonders why he would need gear when he's just going to school. However, Ram clarifies that he has the wrong idea. He believes the school provides students with their equipment. That leaves them speechless, and Ram realizes that the misunderstanding is her fault. In a typical school, he would be correct. Each institution has its own rules regarding the gear students can use. Yu-jae Ryong believes the warrior school must supply it, given their abundant resources. However, Jung clarifies that it's not just about money. Getting good equipment is a skill in itself, which is why students are required to bring their own gear. He argues that this policy only benefits those with money and questions whether being rich can be considered a skill. While he isn't entirely wrong, it's important to note that even financially struggling students can still acquire excellent equipment. Getting into this school signifies that a student possesses the talent to become a top explorer, possibly even a star. This kind of potential attracts investors as companies quickly take an interest in students, recognizing the business opportunities and supporting them. The offers are substantial, given that these are major corporations. She mentions that she received a scholarship from the Ginseng Group, along with a guaranteed job until retirement. Without showing any surprise, he listens as she explains that this is the kind of opportunity the school provides. He will have plenty of chances chances to prove himself against the other students. But first, he must pass the exam. The transfer test is even more challenging than the entrance exam, so he needs to prepare, and acquiring equipment is part of that. That's why the director wanted to help. Since she has already conveyed the message, all he needs to do is head to the refinery in the basement. She wishes him luck and hopes he gets in. He responds that things could have gone badly, and Sairam asks how. He explains that he never expected her uncle to help him this much. The more he learns about the test, the more it seems like people will do anything to pass. That's exactly why she wants to help, even if it means using her own money. The look on his face annoys her every single time. However, he's glad to hear her offer because money alone isn't enough. The person making the gear matters too. Fortunately, this company's equipment division is one of the best in the world. When they reach the forge, he remarks that one piece of gear shouldn't be that different from another. However, what he sees changes his mind. The forge is massive, built inside a former dungeon known as the Bubbling Abyss. Sairam then asks what he thinks. He realizes this isn't the kind of place where one casually asks for something to be made, and a chill runs through him. Suddenly, a giant figure appears behind them. The boy spins around immediately, prepared to fight. The figure grumbles that Zeke dragged him out of his weekend nap and didn't even bother to come to the forge himself. Tyrion asks if it's a monster, but Sairam clarifies that no, he is the head of the equipment division. While Tyrion isn't entirely incorrect, Sairam adds that he is actually an ancient titan named Argeus, essentially a monster by human standards. He was naturalized in Korea through a special rite. As he lights a cigar, Argeus asks which human Zeke was referring to. Was it this little boy or the elf's niece? She mentions that the information had already been sent to him, but Argeus brushes that off. Digital records are a human concern and he doesn't care for them. His staff usually manages that, but it's a day off, so no one is around. Still, that doesn't matter. Since Zeke asked him to handle this himself, he says they should begin. He points to the boy's weapon and asks if that staff is his primary one. Jerian agrees, and Argeus immediately challenges him to try hunting him. Sarim tenses up and asks what Argeus is doing. Argeus explains that this is how his kind judges people. If the boy can't prove himself, he won't bother with the job. However, he admits that the boy feels different. His sharp eyes are accustomed to hunting, and he possesses a killing intent that can be honed. Then he tells him again to try to beat him. Sarum remains on edge as Garion prepares for the challenge. She warns Argeus that he rarely refuses a challenge like this. Suddenly, the Titan's eye widens. The boy has already moved in. He swings the staff with impressive skill and power, while Sarim watches nervously. The impact knocks Argeus' cigar to the ground, and even he finds that unbelievable. Unhurt, he demands to know where the boy got that weapon, which throws Garion off balance. He knows the hit landed clean. Sure, there are monsters he can't defeat in a single strike, but hitting this one felt like smashing into a massive wall. It wasn't just tough, it felt more like striking something lifeless. Now he wants to know what kind of monster he just attacked, and there's another reason Sarim is so shaken. Monsters are ranked by stars. 1-star monsters are already dangerous enough to kill humans, but a normally armed person can still take one down. However, at 2 stars, the danger significantly increases. A trained person can handle guns effectively, but 3 stars indicate a much worse situation that requires armed forces equipped with heavy weapons. At 4 stars, it escalates into a disaster, forcing ground troops to cease fighting and concentrate on evacuation and damage control. After that, artillery and bombs are deployed to eliminate them. That's the military's limit. Anything above 5 stars is beyond the capabilities of modern armies. Even if they achieve victory, the cost is massive destruction. Therefore, elite explorer teams are sent in instead. Argeus, a 7-star monster, asks again where the boy acquired that weapon. Girion wonders if it hurt him more than he expected, and is confused about why Argeus keeps pressing him for answers. Argeus warns him to think very carefully before responding, revealing that he is the one who created that staff. Girion is taken aback and now feels irritated. Argeus states he will ask one last time, why is this weapon in Girion's hands instead of the person it was forged for? If Argeus made it, then the staff is above A rank and should be registered with the association, including the owner's identity and exact location. This isn't the kind of item a smuggler can easily acquire. Sarim refuses to believe he could have stolen it, but Girion insists he won't explain himself and doesn't owe them an answer. Sarim calls that attitude stupid, while Argeus says he understands and will now judge the boy with that perspective in mind. In that moment, Girion can only think of death. There's no way to dodge, no clear way to block, and no weakness in the monster's hand. Taking the hit means certain death, so there's only one option left, the last technique he learned by watching his father. Argeus notices a change, but he still brings his attack down. When two forces collide head-on, the larger one prevails. However, the outcome shifts if they don't meet directly. With the right angle and timing, even when victory seems impossible, a force can still be redirected. Sarim can't believe he dodged an attack from a 7-star monster, while Argias waits to see what happens next. Girion knows his only chance is to stab the giant's single eye with the needle, but before he can reach it, the Titan's prosthetic hand grabs him and pulls him right up to its face. She steps in, stating that while the boy may look suspicious, that still doesn't give Argias the right to attack a human. She reminds him to consider the consequences. Naturalized species cannot attack humans unless it is truly an emergency. If they do, they lose their rights and are treated like hostile monsters. Argias releases the boy and reassures her not to worry. He understands the rule very well and has finally figured out why the boy possesses the weapon he created. That's the reason Zeke woke him from his nap. He apologizes, stating that the boy has every right to carry that staff and promises to make up for his mistake. Just then, his eye catches something else. It's been 30 years since anyone injured him. Serum doesn't understand what he means because she missed the events that transpired. Argias asks if they know why he works for humans now. She speculates that it's because the attack squad hunted him 30 years ago, but he corrects her, saying that's wrong. He finds it almost amusing that humans tell the story that way, considering they couldn't even touch him. The one who hunted him was a single man. This man cut off his hand and could have killed him, but chose not to. As he speaks, the boy stares at him, and Argias stares right back. Argias has always been a monster of overwhelming power, and back then, he was fully prepared to fight that hunter, who wielded a battle axe. He was the boy's father. Ancient titans are the strongest of all giants, possessing unknown lifespans, and fewer than 10 are known to exist. Their strength far surpasses that of ordinary people. They are also renowned for crafting gear with special powers, including powerful artifacts. That's a talent they are born with, and dwarves are the race closest to them. Unlike the Titans, the dwarves chose to live alongside humans, while the Titans did not. They looked down on humans as beings beneath them. Then, something significant happened 30 years ago during the mission to take down Argias. At the forge entrance stood an automaton colossus, a 4-star monster. They asked if the link to base was still down, but all magical communication was blocked. Something was jamming the signal. In a panic, someone yelled that he was coming and urged everyone to brace themselves. The Colossus attacked the intruders with full force. The shield user braced himself, attempting to absorb the impact with all his strength. Meanwhile, the girl maneuvered behind the automaton, ready to strike. She knew she had to seize this opportunity before it vanished. Her attack was sharp and well-aimed, but the helmet deflected it. That was the last outcome she wanted. Her sword proved ineffective, unable to break through the armor at all. Sensing her vulnerability, the automaton launched a counterattack, slamming its shield into her. She was sent flying and crashed into the wall. The situation was far worse than they had anticipated. Ubik's attack squad, known for being one of the best at clearing dungeons, was struggling in the bubbling abyss. They had already encountered 7 colossal creatures, and each time one was defeated, another appeared almost immediately. If the other team was faring just as poorly, then everything would be lost. Realizing the situation, the shield bearer told the others to run. He already knew that getting everyone out alive would be nearly impossible. As he spoke, the automaton swung again, but the young man raised his shield just in time to block the attack. His skill allows him to burn energy to enhance all his physical abilities, though it leaves him helpless afterward. After catching the sword on his shield, he used another skill, Push, which threw the automaton off balance. He knew that if his leader had to use that power now, things would get really bad. Still, he had already accepted that they might not all survive. They couldn't defeat this monster, but perhaps they could stall it. If luck was somehow on their side, they might still have a chance. However, they soon sensed a crushing presence. Argias asked what was happening in his forge, and in that moment, they knew they were finished. He looked at them like pests, wondering if any cockroaches had survived after facing his automatons. Just standing near him filled them with fear. Their leader shouted one last time for everyone to run. With the little strength he had left, he charged at Argias himself, hoping to buy them a few more seconds. But the Titan erased him with a single strike, reducing him to ash. He never stood a chance. To Argosh, they were all beneath him. Their bodies were weak and their gear was worthless. A world ruled by lesser beings was doomed to fail. Then his eyes settled on the one still standing, the mage, trembling with a staff in hand. Argias found it somewhat interesting that fear hadn't broken his loyalty, though he also knew it wouldn't matter in the end. The boy understood that he couldn't handle a monster that even the leader couldn't defeat. Then a man appeared, stating that he had warned them this place wasn't safe. If they had gathered information step by step, they could have come prepared. There was no point in rushing a dungeon cleared just for the sake of it. The boy had no idea who this man was. The man explained that the association received their distress call, and he had come as part of the rescue team. He even wore armor, though it seemed heavier than the boy had expected. The boy was shocked to realize that he had come alone. He was the only one who made it that far when the automaton suddenly turned on the newcomer. A huge noise rang through the forge, causing the boy to freeze in fear, while the man calmly remarked that these machines were pretty strong. Back then, Yu Xiao wasn't famous. To most people, he was just a nobody. Even so, he effortlessly cut off the monster's arm. Some first-generation explorers recognized who he was, but he never cared about fame. His only concern was saving people. That day changed everything. Yu Xiao stepped in to finish off the automaton, and with one powerful swing, he split it straight down the middle. This display of strength caught Argias's attention. As he looked at Yu Xiao, he realized that this opponent would be more challenging. And that was the day the world learned of the incredible power that could change everything. The force of that strike alone altered the light inside the dungeon. The mage couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. The entire squad had been struggling against one colossus, and this man had defeated it in a single blow. Yunsheng then asked the mage if he had any mana left. Not much, the mage said, but enough to cast a blessing. Yunsheng turned it down and requested a levitation spell instead. If the mage could perform that, he should also be able to carry the other two out. They were badly hurt, but still alive. Argias found that attitude laughable. It was as if this man truly believed he could walk out of there alive. Yusing made it clear that as long as he stood there, Argias wouldn't touch the others. This declaration set the Titan off. He launched a full-force attack, but Yusing responded with perfect precision. The aura around him was overwhelming, and when their weapons clashed, the entire dungeon shook with the sound. As the mage retreated, he glanced back in fear. 10 years after the admission, adventurers had finally reached a wall. They had gained superhuman strength, and their equipment had improved as well, becoming better suited to each user. However, even with enhanced abilities and upgraded gear, they still lacked skill and real combat experience. The solution lay in human development, a martial art that defies conventional logic. At first, only a few believed in it, but they began studying and developing those techniques. Argias did get hit. Although his armor absorbed the first blow, Yunsheng didn't stop there and struck again. He was one of the few who truly mastered that martial art. The mage began to smile, believing the monster was finished. However, that hope quickly faded. Argias acknowledged that this man was different. He knew how to wield his weapon effectively. If the weapon had been capable of withstanding even half of his power, the battle might have turned out differently. The blade's edge had already melted from the force of the impact. Yunsheng still couldn't afford top-class gear, and this wasn't the first axe he had ruined. He glanced back at the people he came to save and felt a sense of relief. They were nearly out. Now, he just had to hold off the monster in front of him. Argias's burning sword came down, and Yunsheng caught it with the handle of his axe. The Titan acknowledged that Yunsheng's defense and dodging were among the best he had ever seen from a human. However, the axe Yunsheng carried was inadequate by his standards. While he could continue to defend, the weapon itself wouldn't last much longer. As he prepared for another strike, Argias declared that this would be the end. However, Yunsheng had other plans. Their weapons clashed once more with monstrous force. This time, instead of redirecting the blow, Yunsheng met it head-on. This was the first form of the technique that Yu Jieyong would one day learn. A skill that turns the enemy's power back on them. But when it came to strength, experience, and clean execution, his father wielded it on a whole different level. It was powerful enough to make the Titans step back. This was the martial art of a hero. Argias assumed that all humans knew this story, the tale of the hero who defeated the monster that day. When Jerry Yong's father struck him, the monster inside Argias died. The life he lived afterward was no longer truly his. It was the one Yu Song had spared. What the attack squad failed to accomplish was achieved by one rescuer alone. It was a strange ending for such a grand story, but the real part begins after that. Ancient Titan never kneel to those they consider lesser, yet Argias accepted exile under human rule. Sifam recalls this case because it shocked the entire world. Eventually, Argias received citizenship, aided by the fact that he hadn't killed anyone. However, he still had crimes to answer for, so he was required to forge equipment as repayment. But this version was different from what she knew. Argias explained that the staff Jerry Young carried had been crafted as a gift for his father. Although his father never requested it, Argias believed he deserved something special. The protagonist had always thought the staff was simply sturdy and nothing more, which is why they never pawned it. It was only really good for smashing people with brute force, which was definitely not what they expected. Sairam got stuck on the part about pawning it. Argias said the answer was simple and that he should already know it. He asked if his father ever used it as a weapon, explaining that he would have made him an axe as soon as the rest of the material for the blade arrived. But then he lost contact with him, and since he couldn't leave the dungeon, he sent what he had already finished to Jerryong's father. He couldn't be sure, but he doubted he would ever complete that weapon. Still, that wasn't so bad. So, he asked the protagonist to give him the unfinished weapon. Now, he would complete what he had started. Not for the father, but for the son. While the Titan worked, they headed back up. Sairam kept glancing at MC, clearly curious after hearing everything. She asked how he was feeling now. He replied that he was fine, and it seemed the Titan was determined to ensure everything was okay. Jerryong didn't know how long the work would take, but Argias sounded committed to finishing as quickly as possible. Still, he warned them that masterpieces were not easily created. Since Wednesday was a holiday, Sairam asked if he would be free then. She wanted to help him study for the written test, and he agreed that sounded useful. As they continued walking, she realized there was one more thing she wanted to say. His father must have been an amazing person. She never imagined he was the hero from that story after retiring. Jerryong mentioned that he would go rest, and if anything came up, they could talk later. He didn't respond to her comment. Once in the car, she headed home and checked online, only to confirm that the story people told wasn't true. That was what she had always learned, but now Argias's words were stuck in her head. The team that cleared the dungeon was now praised as heroes, but that glory came from another adventurer's work. That makes Argias's story difficult to dismiss. However, when she considers Jerion's power, it's clear that his father must have been someone extraordinary, and within dungeons, the truth often becomes distorted. Yushang, the so-called false dragon slayer, was once regarded as one of Korea's best, until his records were revealed to be fabricated, constructed from blackmail and deception. After getting hurt, he admitted it himself, and the numerous articles online analyzing the situation only made her more unsure about what to believe. Then, her practical exam results were released. At the school's dungeon department, a staff member received thanks for their efforts. Professor Chu apologizes to Kang for keeping her busy all weekend, but Kang doesn't mind. She believes first-year students matter and understands he needs to watch them closely. She comments that the department is intense. Teaching is challenging enough, but this freshman class is even more gifted than she was at their age. Then she asks if he really expected that student to rank first. Kang admits he didn't. A result like that is hard to predict. Sairam stares at the rankings in disbelief. Several names are grouped near hers, and all of them are hybrids. The first name on the list is Dev Choi. He inherited sword talent from his white class explorer father and magic talent from his elf mother, making him an ideal magic swordsman. In second place is Anisha, whose mana and control surpass those of many full elves, showcasing her potential to become a top mage. The last contender is a boy born to a human and a dwarf. He possesses dwarf-like strength and toughness, combined with human speed and reflexes, making him the best of both worlds. This is Ter Velkason, renowned for having the best body on the planet, and he is a student here. Despite this, he must be just as talented as the other two. One of them should have taken first place, so it's hard to believe she accomplished all this on her own. While the physical test may have boosted her score, strength alone can't account for everything. That's why she wants him to take a more active role. He could become a great leader, but right now, he doesn't seem interested in getting close to anyone, leaving the other students nervous about approaching him. However, no one can go far alone forever, and he will learn that by his second year. Kang mentions that this isn't something she needs to stress over. Sometimes, changes happen quietly, and people miss the signs. He knows she truly cares about every student, but if she trusts him more than she worries, he will figure it out. 4 days pass, and finally, the holiday arrives. A few boys are busy gossiping about something a girl did. When one of them bumps into a giant, he turns around, ready to complain, but freezes upon seeing the enormous figure in front of him. The massive boy calmly apologizes, explaining that he was distracted and didn't notice them. This only makes them more nervous, prompting them to quickly apologize in return. Afterward, he notices that his shirt is dirty, and all he can think is how terrible his luck is. Deep down, he really just misses his mom. Stuck in Europe, Yubin had once been a successful hunter in Korea. She used to share all kinds of stories from her explorer days with her son, which inspired him to admire Korea and its culture. With that encouragement and his natural talent, he gained admission to the warrior school through a special transfer exam. However, he struggles with being painfully shy. He wants to talk to his classmates, but he's scared they'll laugh at him because his Korean isn't good. He hates feeling this way. Noticing his discomfort, the boys apologize for being so loud, unaware that he's not annoyed at all. In fact, they're actually scared of him, so without intending to, he's become a loner. He then notices two boys nearby, chatting about nothing important. They're planning to go to a PC bang. This reminds him of his mother, who once mentioned that she used to play games in places like that. Inside, there aren't many people. He feels uncertain about what to do, while someone nearby is talking on the phone. He tries to use a self-service terminal to sign in, but just standing there makes him nervous. He begins to worry that he's holding everyone up and thinks he should just leave, especially since he's alone. A young man then tells him that he probably doesn't have an account yet. That machine is only for people who have already signed up, so he needs a different one. He offers to show him how it works. All he needs to do is enter the basic information, pay at another machine, and then pick a computer. The giant thanks him, and Jaryong replies that it's no big deal. He figures the guy is probably a foreigner unfamiliar with the place. Still, he's mostly waiting for Siram, who hasn't shown up yet. She's late, and if she had arrived on time, or if he had gone to the black market first, he would have checked the small black object he found in the chest with the jelly. He still had no clue what it was. It felt smooth, but it definitely didn't seem edible. Unable to identify it, he decided to store it for now. If he really needed cash, selling the item infused with Enkel's blood would make more sense, as it came from one of the 3 great disasters of the Agar forest. For decades, many raid teams had attempted to bring it down, but no one succeeded. Even a tiny amount of its blood was considered priceless. The government had banned hunting it, and anything made from its materials sold for a fortune. He was supposed to eat lunch with Siram and then hit the black market that evening, but her delay ruined the plan. The foreigner claims there are no other seats available and sits next to the guy who helped him. He then tells Jaryong to sit as well, since he's not waiting on anyone anymore. The protagonist takes a seat and logs in. Nothing special catches his eye. After all, the computer at home is much better. Then he notices the game on the next screen and asks the foreigner if he plays Heroes of Chaos. The foreigner confirms that he does, and they discover their levels are closely matched. Since Jaryong's usual teammates aren't online, the foreigner asks him to queue together for ranked matches. Around Seoul, there are ruined, empty areas known as scars. During the invasion, entire cities were lost. Some of these cities were recovered later, but those too close to dungeons remain abandoned. Now, those places serve as a second line of defense for humanity. There has never been a case of monsters leaving the walls on their own. In fact, there's even a transport system for moving them. One guard absolutely hates that job. While his friends earn money hunting, he's stuck driving monsters around. Jo-young tells him that if he hates it that much, he should quit and return to the field. She used to be a gold-class explorer until an eye injury forced her to retire, and now she asks him why he's still here. Sun Chong-woo, a bronze-class adventurer, admits he's doing it for the money because he can barely get onto any teams now. Saying it out loud bruises his pride. Then something goes wrong and they have to stop the truck. The monster couldn't have escaped, could it? She gets out and instructs him to report that they stopped for an inspection before going to handle the situation. Back in the cab, he begins sending the message. He's worried, but his partner is skilled, so he reassures himself that she'll be fine. Soon, the door opens, and he's prepared to praise her for handling the situation. But another woman steps in instead and dismisses it as nothing worth bragging about. For a government worker, Cho Yena's reflexes are decent, but there must be a reason she's no longer in the field. The woman glances at the names behind her before turning to the driver, asking why he is still just standing there. If he wants to live, she insists, he should start driving. Meanwhile, Jaryong and the foreigner are enjoying a great run, and their food arrives at the perfect moment. MC hadn't expected them to be the same age. The guy didn't look older, just significantly bigger and more built, so he asks what school he goes to, but he never receives an answer. Suddenly, both of them sense that something is wrong. The ground shakes, and people begin to wonder if it's an earthquake. However, it feels more like some kind of blast nearby. Everyone begins arguing and speculating about what happened. A truck has crashed, and some suggest that the driver might have been drunk. One person starts recording the scene, while another insists they need to call the authorities immediately. From a rooftop, a girl remarks that it would have been better if the truck had crashed closer to downtown. Explorers will flood the area soon, but she believes she still has time to escape. Her superiors are already ordering her to return. Meanwhile, the monsters begin pouring out of the truck, awakened by her actions, and the curious crowd instantly regrets their decision to stay. Horn horrors are dangerous on their own, but in groups they're far worse. Looking below, she counts about 50 people and decides to stay and watch. Perhaps 100 would die before help arrived. One bystander is grabbed by the head and killed on the spot, while another freezes in terror. The monsters go wild with helpless victims right in front of them. Then, a blue glow flashes through the chaos as Jerry Yang arrives. His kick slams straight into the first monster's face, leaving the onlookers speechless. He drops the creature with ease, fully focused on stopping the beasts before they can hurt anyone else. Without even turning to the crowd, he demands to know why they are still there and tells them to run. He has fought these monsters before, and the one-horned ones shouldn't be too difficult. But he quickly snaps his focus back as a motorcycle rushes right at him. He barely manages to slip out of the way, and then he realizes what it is. A two-horned horror charges in, and Jerry Yang responds with a brutal kick. However, the impact doesn't go as he expected, forcing him to step back. These monsters typically live only 5 to 6 years, with most dying before they can grow a second horn. Only about 8% survive long enough to reach that stage and breed. When they do, their power surges far beyond normal levels. Still, no matter how strong or fast it is, he knows he can defeat it if he has to kill it. His foot throbs, and he realizes the real issue is how tough these creatures are. They're at least 3 or 4 times sturdier than that fool who called himself a tank. If only he had one of his real weapons. The beast lunges at the boy once more. Jerry Yang skillfully avoids the attack and assesses the damage from the previous strike. He takes a step back, resets his stance, and prepares for the next exchange. The monster still isn't finished, so the protagonist scans the area and spots a broken stop sign on the ground. He stomps it flat and pulls out the pole, transforming it into a makeshift staff. Furious, the monster charges again. Jerry Yang lets his aura rise and braces for the impact. Now armed, he grips the pole tightly and focuses. The beast stomps down harder than he expected, and that burst of force launches it over MC's head, something he didn't see coming. Now, it's headed toward a group of civilians who are frozen with fear and unable to protect themselves. The beast charges at them as if they are its next meal. The difference between a 2-star and a 3-star monster is enormous. Both types are already far beyond what ordinary humans can withstand. Regular people simply perish against creatures like this, and even seasoned adventurers can find themselves struggling without proper gear. However, there is one exception. The foreigner catches the beast's punch with his bare hand, clearly intending to fight. One powerful blow is enough to shove the monster back, showcasing the exception of those who train their bodies beyond human limits until they become monsters themselves. The beast digs its claws into the ground to prevent itself from sliding. The foreigner pushed it back, aware that bare hands wouldn't inflict real damage. Suddenly, something grabs his attention. The beast lets out a threatening roar, and at that moment, Jerry Yang moves in from behind with a makeshift staff. Using his technique, he delivers a sharp strike to the back of the creature's neck. Even the foreigner is shocked by the result, as the beast drops dead, a hole pierced through its back. Jerry Yang lets out a relieved breath, but then a loud sound makes him turn. The foreigner hears it too, and looks over, realizing that another explosion has gone off nearby. In just 1 minute, that monster caused all this destruction. The foreigner says help won't arrive for a few more minutes. This kind of attack came out of nowhere, and people are dying while they stand here talking. Sunk knows a taunt skill, something every tank learns. It's essentially a high-frequency shout that draws nearby monsters toward him. Since he wants to become an adventurer, he decides to keep the monsters focused on him until help arrives. He tells Jerry Yang to hide, explaining that he can't ask a near stranger to risk his life as well. After all, they've only played games together for a few hours. He tells him to use the shout already, figuring the guy must really be a tank if he knows that skill. Sunk warns him it's dangerous, but Jerry Yang insists he was going in alone anyway. If he were by himself, he'd think it over more, but he's not. He tells Sunk that he's good at games, especially when it comes to protecting people. He wants to be an adventurer too, and if he's going to do this, he's giving it everything he has. There's no more time to talk. They have to move. A store has been wrecked, and someone is hiding under the counter. Nearby, the monster has just killed another person. Sunk prepares to use his skill. Inside the shop, the beast drops its latest victim and begins tearing apart the counter in search of its next target. Suddenly, Suk's shout echoes through the area, capturing the monster's attention. It halts immediately, leaving its would-be victim in shock. The girl who caught the monster's gaze is already dead. Caused all this, hears the shout too. Now she's curious about what just happened. After using the skill, Sho catches his breath and takes a fighting stance, prepared for whatever comes next. The monsters quickly converge on the source of his shout. The strongest monster points toward him, and the one-horned creatures charge first. He stands his ground, ready to fight. Suddenly, he hears something above him. A monster is attacking from his blind spot. Despite the surprise, he manages to block the strike, though it isn't enough to injure him. With his free hand, he begins to focus his aura and then slams the beast with such force that it goes flying. However, he can't relax just yet as more monsters are closing in, preparing to attack together. In the distance, the two horned monsters notice the commotion. Suddenly, someone drops in from above its Jerryong. He lands near them and sees that there are two creatures, both with double horns. As he looks at the crashed truck, he begins to understand. The monsters had been piling bodies inside it, which explains why there aren't many left on the street. Now, the two horned beasts turn their attention to him. The protagonist waits until they come a little closer. Fighting these creatures up close without gear gives them poor odds. At this moment, they would only hinder each other if they tried to team up too closely. Therefore, Seik will draw the weaker monsters, as he is the tank. Jerryong is already in range, and now he makes his move. His job is to bring down the strongest one. He's the damage dealer. He raises his makeshift staff and darts past the monster, so fast that it doesn't even notice the hit at first. A string of marks is left across its body. This pole is nothing compared to a needle, and if MC had his real staff, the fight would look very different. With ordinary materials, there's only so much he can do. Even so, he keeps pushing forward. It isn't ideal, but there's still a chance. He recalls fighting Zeke barehanded. Those fast, heavy blows weren't overwhelming at first, but they gradually wore him down. Meanwhile, the monster launches its next attack. Jerryong unleashes a rapid series of strikes to hold it back. Aware that this alone won't fully stop it, he deftly slips past the assault, knowing that even the slightest mistake could be fatal. In an instant, he counters once more. As dangerous as this situation is, it also presents a rare opportunity, a chance for him to grow stronger. He must seize this moment and win with whatever he has. Just then, another beast closes in to attack. In that instant, he recalls how Zeke moved during their fight and mimics that same kind of footwork. Since his father Zeke was the first person he had met with such strength, he uses what he learned here to sharpen his fourth skill. His staff begins to rain blows down on the monster in front of him. After the barrage, the beast crashes to the ground, but another one suddenly grabs his foot, putting him instantly on high alert. It slams him down hard enough to crack the concrete, causing Jerryong to spit blood from the impact. 2 against 1 is tough, and fair or not, he has to deal with it. This isn't a human fight, so the rules don't apply. Before he can recover, the tank rushes in and knocks the monster away. For the tank, luck counts as a skill too. Watching through a phone camera, 2 bystanders are stunned as they witness the incredible scene. Those 2 just took down dozens of monsters without any gear. Dong-yoon is thrilled that he captured all of it on video. His friend reminds him that he only stayed because he was too scared to run. Meanwhile, Ken wants to know who these 2 even are. They look younger than the others. Based on what they just did, they must be gold-level hunters. Perhaps they're students from the warrior school, or rookies who haven't been recognized yet. Either way, he's uploading the clip and asking his friend to create a thumbnail on the laptop. The story will spread quickly, and he doesn't want to miss out on millions of views. Worn out, the foreigner thinks the rescue team should have arrived by now. In the end, only the 2 of them were able to stop this. Jerryong apologizes for ruining his cool moment, but he needs a hand getting off the ground. Finally, they shake hands, both feeling exhausted. When asked if he's okay, he admits not really. He suspects he might have a fracture or 2, but compared to what he expected, it could have been worse. The foreigner is amazed that Jerryong handled 2 double-horned monsters. The protagonist returns the compliment, noting that his new friend fought 9 monsters and still came to help in the end. The foreigner brushes it off, claiming that his were only 2-star beasts. Since they're already talking, he asks what school MC attends, mentioning that he's heard about the schools in the area. He quickly apologizes, clarifying that he didn't mean to insult MC's school. He just assumed MC went to the warrior school as well. Instead of answering, Jerryong asks his friend where he ranks and how many students are above him. The foreigner replies that he isn't sure. He barely talks to anyone, and even after taking some tests, he still doesn't know if they measured him correctly. If he had to guess, he's somewhere in the middle, and now he's thinking about how to help his elf friend. Still, there's one last thing to deal with. He asks if that monster plans to stay on top of the truck forever. It was the only taunt that didn't pull, so something about it might be different. Still, he doubts that this is the truly special one. With blood all around the truck, there must be something else inside, and that's likely the real problem. For now, he believes they should keep an eye on it, as they can handle this last monster easily. Then, a loud noise erupts from inside the truck, causing it to shake violently. A hand suddenly pushes through the hole in the roof, catching both boys off guard. In an instant, something yanks the monster back inside the wagon, its claws unable to maintain their grip. Whatever is in there is clearly devouring it. The horned horrors live in groups similar to tribes. The two horned ones act as both parents and chiefs, each leading a pack of fewer than 10. Because they are weak and dungeons are brutal, these tribes band together to survive. Positioned low on the food chain, they face constant threats from stronger predators that keep their numbers in check. Sometimes, a mutant is born with a third horn. This individual isn't just a tribe leader. They are a king who can command hundreds, even thousands. A horned horror king is considered around 5-star level. The two boys quickly spotted him, and both instantly realized the danger they were in. With one swift motion, the king unleashed a massive attack, forcing both Jaryong and his opponent to dodge simultaneously. The creature moved with incredible speed, quickly closing in on Jaryong. He had to react immediately or face certain death. The monster's strike was powerful enough to shatter his makeshift staff, tearing through his defenses and slamming into his stomach. Before he could recover, the king was already throwing a kick, but that strike never landed. Shulking seized the beast in a body lock, its feet ripping through the pavement as he shoved it back. However, things quickly took a turn for the worse when the king caught him with both hands and lifted him as if he weighed nothing. Then the king drove Chulking into the ground, leaving behind a massive crater. What they were missing most was time. They were two prodigies who might one day reach incredible heights, but perhaps that day was not today. Even with all their skill, the gap between them and the monster was simply too vast. Jaryong forced himself to his feet and shouted for it to stop. The king turned toward him, its red aura already surging in for another attack. Unable to defend himself, the protagonist took the blow head-on, and for a moment, the beast seemed satisfied. Then it sensed something else, something on the battlefield far more dangerous than the king. Night had fallen, and Yusong still lay betrayed in a hospital bed. Hardly anyone had known him before he vanished. But now, even this monster was terrified. No one can fully explain what Yusheng left behind. 11 years earlier, a lot had happened, and one man suddenly stepped in front of the press. He confessed to every crime and begged the public for forgiveness. That confession shook the entire world. 12 hours before the fight, Cyrome was still engulfed in confusion. Everything she had learned that Sunday consumed her thoughts. For days, she had been investigating Jaryong's father, trying to determine if he had been framed. She knew that many people would want the spot of a former #1 who had lost his power. What confused her was how the case unfolded. First came the accusations, followed by the victim statements, and then the case continued to build. People were divided in their opinions, and because he was so famous, the false claims didn't completely tarnish his image at first. If Cyrome had been in his position, she would have fought to the end. However, Yusong took a different approach. Instead of defending himself, he accepted every charge against him. After that press conference, even his fans abandoned him, and overnight, he became a liar in everyone's eyes. She couldn't understand why. If someone had forced him, admitting everything only made things worse. Maybe she was the only one who noticed, but his expression felt strange. He didn't look like someone who was falsely accused. He appeared to be accepting punishment, but then she discovered something even stranger. His record showed no family at all, which made her question whether Jaryong was truly his son. However, it seemed more likely that MC simply wasn't officially listed, especially since the two bore a striking resemblance to each other. Yun Qing may have accepted all those accusations because he felt somehow tied to them. At that moment, he had no idea what was happening to his body. He stared at his hand and sensed that something had changed within him. The beast charged at him in a rage, relentlessly pushing forward, knowing it had to kill the boy now. Facing that challenge, Jaryong realized one thing for certain. His body could still move. His timing was perfect as he smashed the monster in the face. That was all that mattered. He could move. With that determination, he set out to crush the monster before him, chaining skill after skill into a non-stop assault. The pressure was overwhelming. The beast did everything it could to block Jaryong's barrage, then attempted to retreat. However, the protagonist knew it wasn't going to escape. The monster fired back, but even with its powerful aura, it couldn't move fast enough to catch him. Then, it revealed the trap. It was already above him in midair and attacked again from close range. The result shocked the beast almost instantly. The blow hadn't hurt the boy at all. MC responded with a brutal kick, launching the creature straight into a nearby building. Even then, Jaryong knew the fight wasn't over. But those last two hits revealed an opening a clean shot to the chin with his needle. In this state, he could actually land it. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, that strange aura vanished. It couldn't have happened at a worse time. The monster dragged itself out of the crater just as Jaryong felt the power leave his body. Now, he had nothing left to stop the next attack. As the beast rushed forward, it noticed too late that the truck container was dropping right onto its head. It was struck hard, but there's a reason for this. Explorers have different roles. Each role exists for a specific purpose, and that container wasn't enough to stop the beast. Completely enraged, it charged at Chulky. Unable to dodge, he braced himself and absorbed the hit as best he could. The blow was brutal, but as a tank, even when badly hurt, he held on. That's what a tank is meant to do. Still, he had already pushed far beyond his limit. Even so, his toughness bought them a little more time, giving Jerryong the chance to launch his strongest attack. The monster realized it couldn't avoid the blow. Jerryong's aura-covered fist rushed in and delivered a perfect uppercut, crushing the creature's chin. That's the job of the one who deals damage. When the dust settled, the beast lay dead, its jaw shattered. This chaos all began with the theft of a monster transport truck, which led to dozens of civilian deaths. Only after everything was over did the rescue team finally arrive. The story spread around the world almost immediately, and the two boys were quickly hailed as heroes. Cavallino watches the video, trying to make sense of what he's seeing. Yadayong recalls being young, scraped up, and having his wound treated. His father reminded him that even small cuts need care. If you ignore them, they can worsen later. The protagonist asked his father if he ever felt pain, since he always bled so much while fighting monsters. His father replied that yes, he felt pain and fear too, but he hid it as best he could because his job was to keep others from getting hurt. When Jerryong was little, he wanted more than anything to be like his father. However, one thought always lingered in his mind. He knew his father didn't want that life for him. Whenever they discussed it, his father urged him to choose another path and always appeared sad. Maybe that was why he never wanted MC to become an explorer, but he never explained it clearly. Jerryong thought he would understand once he was older, but now that answer would never come. He opened his eyes and looked up at a strange ceiling, yet something about it felt oddly familiar. Someone beside him asked if those words were meant for him. Startled, the protagonist turned his head to see Zeke. Zeke remarked that the protagonist was only alive because he was stubborn enough to hold on. He then asked why the director was sitting there with him. As the protagonist attempted to sit up, a wave of pain coursed through his body, prompting Zeke to advise him not to move too much. The treatment had worked, but with injuries that severe, he should have been in a coma. Full recovery would take a month, and until then, Zeke advised him to focus on healing. There was a lot they needed to prepare for. Jerryong thanked him, acknowledging that helping was the right thing to do, but he had something he wanted to ask. However, Zeke interrupted him first. If this was about his father, then yes, they knew each other and had worked together. The protagonist suddenly moved his hand quickly enough to make Zeke tense up, but Jerryong only grabbed the apple. Noticing Zeke's reaction, he asked if Zeke thought he was about to hit him. Zeke admitted that it wasn't the reaction he expected. MC responded that he had no idea what kind of reaction Zeke wanted. He only wanted to know if Zeke had known his father. Given how differently Zeke treated him now, it seemed like they were more than just co-workers. Holding the apple, he took a deep breath. He remembered telling Zeke to get out and die, or to cut off his own arm with a knife, just to prove a point. Maybe Zeke thought he still meant those words. Jerryong then asked how convincing Zeke's act had been. Zeke replied that he really tried to make it believable, and apologized if Jerryong took it personally. Zeke brushed this aside, saying he expected a much more emotional response once he learned the truth. 3 years ago, he might have received that reaction. At that time, revenge consumed the protagonist's thoughts. He longed to punish everyone who had abandoned his father and contributed to his downfall. So Zeke asked what had changed his mind. Jerryong realized he had grown up and that what he once felt was madness. He isn't strong enough to defeat Zeke, so revenge is out of reach. Right now, his main priority is making enough money for the hospital. He doesn't know when a cure will arrive, but he is determined to do whatever he can until it does. No matter what stands in his way, Zeke will get past it. He states that he's here because he has a few questions. Zeke asks why Jerryong was never officially listed as Sung's child and who looked after him after his father became bedridden. MC explains that his father raised him alone, and revealing his identity would have put him in danger. He mentions that he essentially grew up by himself, and Zeke can sense that he's being truthful. Zeke then asks if he knows the name Dugawaniwig, but Jerryong has never heard of it, noting that it isn't a person. It's a dragon, the destroyer of worlds, and the source of the poison ruining his father. Even worse, it's one of the deadliest dragons still alive. Just hearing the word dragon sends fear through people. After the invasion, the walls were constructed with assistance from other races, and explorers grew strong enough that Kamemi was no longer on the brink of extinction. However, rare disasters could still occur, such as events powerful enough to breach those walls. That's the kind of destruction dragons can unleash. They're stronger, smarter, and trickier than any other race, often showing hostility toward humans. Among all monsters, dragons are easily the most dangerous. They don't exactly hate humans. Rather, they view them as beings to rule and exploit. Their biggest mistake, however, was underestimating humanity. They believed that people would never conquer the dungeons, so they hesitated to act. However, after the world descended into chaos, they devised a plan to position themselves as gods, offering protection in exchange for worship. Jerry Young humorously suggests that perhaps humans should be grateful for their intervention. They initially stayed out of it, but once things stopped going their way, the dragons began to attack. That was when his father stepped in. Through careful planning and determination, he became the explorer who proved the dragons could be killed. Once word spread that he had slain one, everything began to shift. The protagonist mentions that he has heard this part before about how the dragons went into hiding, but Zeke corrects him. They didn't hide, they changed tactics. The dragons are cunning enough to alter their appearance. Realizing that brute force wasn't sufficient to wipe out humanity, they began to infiltrate human society instead. The information is classified, and Zeke is only sharing it because he is Song's son. Dogwanid was the last dragon that Song chased before he fell ill. If that dragon is killed, they may be able to create a cure for Song. If Jerry Young wants to take on that mission someday, he must become much stronger, as Zeke plans to help him kill the dragon. Meanwhile, MC is already strong enough to get out of bed. Standing by the window, he studies the card he was given. He remembers being told to forget about it if it seemed impossible, but if there was even a real chance to help his father, he couldn't ignore it. Zeke, however, makes it clear that this choice isn't his yet. If Jerry Young wants that chance, he must climb to the top. The dragons have seamlessly blended into society under false identities, biding their time for the right moment. Even if someone had proof, exposing them without capturing one would achieve nothing. If they move too early, the dragons will vanish once more, leaving the world in a state of panic. Therefore, the strike must be swift and precise. To achieve this, a special team has been formed in recent years to hunt Dugwani. Every member is a veteran adventurer with the skills necessary for the mission. If Jerry Young isn't strong enough, then no matter how badly he wants to join, the team won't accept him. They can't afford to have anyone who might hold them back. That would ruin the mission and put everyone in danger. If all of this is real, he asks how long he has, knowing they won't wait forever. Zeke responds that they still don't know the dragon's exact location, but expect to find it within 2 years. As the protagonist pointed out, when that time comes, no one will wait for him. Before leaving, Zeke tells the protagonist that he can hate him if he wants or choose never to see him again. But he makes one promise, with or without the main character. They will hunt that dragon down no matter what. Those words resonate with Jerry Young, and for the first time, he sees a real chance to save his father. It was exactly what he had always wanted to hear, that a cure might actually exist. This revelation filled him with hope, but it also brought something else fear. He fears he won't become strong enough before the mission, one that could save his father and avenge him as well. What he has now isn't enough, but he'll get there no matter the cost. For so long, there was no hope of a cure, but now, suddenly, there is hope. That tiny bit of hope gives Jerry Young more drive than he has ever felt. While washing up, he hears the door open, and the nurse expresses her relief at seeing him awake. She asks if he is in pain, to which he replies that it's mostly muscle soreness. The doctor will explain more later, but she reassures him that he will feel like this for a few more days. His arm had to be almost completely rebuilt. When he was brought in, it was in terrible shape, and the medical team had to be extremely careful, or he could have lost it. A high-level healer is the reason the surgery was successful. As he looks at his arm, Jerry Young asks about something else. He wants to know what happened to the friend who fought beside him. The nurse informs him that his friend recovered remarkably well and was discharged the same day. Hearing this, he begins to wonder how long he has been in the hospital. Before he can ask, the nurse shyly requests a photo with him. She snaps a quick selfie on the spot. After that, Jerry Young asks if he can leave as well. She agrees, but warns him not to go out the front, as reporters are all over the hospital, waiting to interview him the moment he steps outside. Confused, he wonders why, and the nurse suggests he should see for himself. When she shows him her phone, he's stunned. The entire situation could have turned into a disaster. Without him and his friend, hundreds of people might have lost their lives. Now everyone wants to know who he is, and reporters have been flooding the hospital ever since. She hands him a bag and explains that his friend asked her to give it to him. If he wants to keep his identity hidden, he should use what's inside and slip out through the back. Serum prepared the contents, and there's likely a spell on it to help conceal his identity. When Jerry Young opens the bag, he finds a rope inside, definitely not the escape plan he had in mind. With no better options, he throws the rope out the window and climbs down to the ground. From above, the nurse calls after him, reassuring him not to worry about the photo. She'll only post it once he becomes a famous explorer. Jae-young waves back, still not fully grasping how significant this has become. Meanwhile, Saerom waits in her car, already expecting him to arrive so they can leave together. The protagonist asks if the rope was truly the only option. Instead of answering, she counters by asking if he would have preferred to be caught. He admits no, but then asks about the bag in the car. Saerom explains that she bought him some clothes and a new phone, assuming his old one was destroyed. He's clearly touched by her gesture, but she insists that he shouldn't make a big deal out of it. Honestly, she feels overwhelmed and doesn't even know where to start after everything that happened. A disaster erupted right next to him, yet somehow he managed to defeat that monster. Still, she knows that strange things continue to happen around him, so she asks where they are headed next. What she truly desires is some rest, but they only have today. If he wants custom gear, they need to leave now. He says he already has clothes, but Saerom means explorer gear, and he should realize how lucky he is. The best tailor in the world has agreed to make his armor. Armor materials fall into 3 groups, starting with normal cloth. While it offers the weakest defense, support magic is highly effective on it, making it the preferred choice for mages and healers who typically stay off the front lines. The second type is steel, known for its durability, but dungeon metal is so dense that only those with real strength and stamina can wear it. Leather falls in the middle. It's not too heavy, but still sturdy. This makes it perfect for someone like him who fights up close and focuses on dealing damage. Maybe it's finally time for him to start wearing armor. Saerom is eager to know how he defeated the monster and wants the full story. However, Jae-young mentions that someone recorded it, so she can watch that instead. The problem is, the video only shows him defeating the owl and the 2 horned creatures. It doesn't reveal how he managed to take down the 5-star monster, which surprises him since he didn't even realize it was ranked that high. He assumed it had to be strong. Even with Sok Shulkang fully prepared, they shouldn't have won. Then that strange power emerged, and he still can't explain it. Saerom pushes again, asking why he won't just tell her what happened. He struggles to find the right words. It just happened. But that doesn't sound believable. Even professionals need a full team to fight a monster like that. She knows he's not lying, yet it's still hard for her to accept. All it does is remind her that geniuses truly are different. Even so, she warns him to be careful, as things are about to get exhausting. It's not just reporters anymore. Both of them are now right in the middle of the entire mess. Sok Shulkang had a tough time as well, spending 4 straight days doing interviews and even appearing on TV. Despite this exposure, he refrained from saying much about Jae-young. He wouldn't even answer basic questions like the MC's name without permission. This situation reminds him of the favor he had asked from Jae-young. If anyone asked what really happened, Sokin was supposed to say he didn't know either. Wanting to keep his identity a secret if possible, Sok agreed to cover for him. Anisha inquired about how the 2 of them became so close, but Jae-young truly had no answer. She told him to stay out of sight until he could take the entrance exam. When he asked why, his manager texted, saying they needed to talk soon. Anisha had been researching the exam, and the more she read, the more difficult it appeared. Recently, only 1 out of 100 people passed. The protagonist realized that many applicants likely pursued this opportunity on a whim, and if that were the case, they would still be weaker than Anisha. When she became annoyed, he quickly clarified that he wasn't calling her weak. In response, she told him to shut up. However, he wasn't entirely wrong. She had immense potential. Still, she insisted he was missing the point. People who aren't strong enough don't go in alone. They move in groups. That's when he finally understood. The exam is taken in teams, and most candidates are children of adventurers. Because of this, their parents' connections help them form teams ahead of time. Almost everyone applying comes from that kind of background, and they are usually the ones who pass. If Jae-young's identity gets out, people will swarm him immediately. The school claims to discourage this behavior, but that's not how things really work. He could even aim for special admission, but that's not his goal. What he needs to understand is how those who lack support still manage to succeed. He intended to surpass them all and carve out his own path. She admired his determination, even if it seemed a bit naive. Then, she mentioned that she wanted to change clothes. After pointing out the bathroom, she instructed him to get changed and meet her at the end of the hall. Meanwhile, at the front desk, the secretary was busy with her work. Anisha informed her that she had an appointment with the CEO of the establishment. The secretary asked her to wait a few minutes, then made a call to notify him that a guest had arrived. Then she said he wanted to explain what happened, but he had an urgent commitment and couldn't come. This was a problem, as there wasn't another open day for this. He offered to make it up to her, but Anisha insisted that this wasn't about money. She needed this for the warrior school entrance exam, and the cancellation could ruin everything. At that moment, someone nearby remarked that Anisha looked familiar, though they couldn't quite place her name. Among adventurers, it's often said that this generation grew up very differently. The first generation paid in blood to move the world forward. Since then, technology has improved, and the next generation was born into much better conditions. Those pioneers retired and provided their children with everything they could. They passed down more than just talent. They also ensured their children received top training from early childhood. When people ask who benefited the most from all that, many point to one girl, Gayun. Anisha recognized her as a first-year student at the warrior school. Gayun asked if Anisha knew her, mentioning that she was the student council president. Then, she suggested they could skip the formal introductions. Her uncle was the CEO, and the reason he suddenly had an urgent commitment was because of her. She understood that Anisha was upset about the canceled meeting, but in reality, it felt more like Gayun had taken her place. She suggested that if Anisha helped her out, it would make the story sound much better. Anisha understood the extent of Gayun's influence. She had already heard plenty about what that girl was capable of. While they were talking, Jirayan walked in. Since Gayun was Anisha's senior, it seemed they had no real choice but to comply, even without knowing her. He expressed his gratitude to Gayun, but he wasn't finished yet. Right after that, he told her to drop the fake niceness and leave already. She clearly didn't expect that, and the secretary became nervous on the spot. Gayun just grinned and remarked that the kid had guts. Then, she asked who he was. Anisha tried to intervene before things went any further. Her hand shook slightly, as if Gayun's words had struck her directly. Jirayan instantly understood what had happened. Gayun hadn't been talking to him at all. Anisha knew she wasn't supposed to speak up, but it felt as though she had been slashed. Gayun hadn't asked that idiot anything, so Anisha should stay in her place and remain silent. MC stepped in and introduced himself. At 17 years old, he lived in Guanacu and stood 180 centimeters tall. Although he didn't know his current weight, he did share that his favorite food was sausage with stir-fry vegetables. That was sufficient for introductions. What truly mattered was that he was preparing to enter the warrior school. Right now, he was seriously disappointed, because even in that moment, people like her acted as if they were far greater than they truly were. Gayun smiled in a way that seemed almost crazy, her hand shaking with anger. In that instant, Jirayan understood exactly how Anisha felt. She said she didn't completely hate people like him, at least not if they could back up their big talk. He wanted to get into that school, yet he hadn't even taken the test and was already acting like he belonged there. He simply smiled and asked if that was how she handled things. Then he expressed his curiosity, as it was his first time trying it. He wanted to know if he had met her standards, which only irritated her further. Just then, her uncle called out to her from a distance. This was Xiangwu, and he demanded to know what they were doing there. He asked why she had come without telling him, especially after snatching the phone from his hand. It had only been a week since her last incident, just 1 week. Did she want her father to get angry again? Xiangwu apologized to both of them, explaining that his niece had a habit of doing whatever she wanted. Anisha told him he didn't need to apologize, but she was still grateful. As far as she was concerned, this was all just Gayun causing trouble. However, the rumors were true. She was proud and only respected strength. Xiaoyong then asked Anisha to come closer. He wanted to understand what that annoying girl actually did, as she clearly wasn't just an ordinary upperclassman. Anisha explained that Gayun was the student council president. In other words, she was currently the strongest student in the entire school. Students there receive temporary gem rank licenses, allowing them to enter dungeons under professional supervision. With this license, they can use school breaks to explore dungeons and gain real experience before becoming full adventurers. However, student council members are treated differently. Even before official registration, they are viewed almost like professionals and carry significant influence within the school. They can even join teams battling 5-star monsters, and worse, they are seen as the next generation of ranked warriors. Since Gayun is in her 3rd year, she should be 2 years older than them. But she was still only in her 2nd year, so Jirayan asked if she had failed. Anisha replied no, explaining that Gayun had taken the position from the former president. This prompted Jirayan to question how that was even possible. Anisha reminded him that the school values strength above all else. Students can join the council starting in the 1st semester of their 2nd year, and Gayun did exactly that. She then drew her sword and challenged every council member. By the end of that semester, she had defeated them all and became the youngest student council president in the school's history. After all that, Gayun looked ready to leave, and Anisha felt relieved that things hadn't gotten worse. However, Juryong called out saying he wanted to make a bet with her. He assured her it would be quick since she was busy. He had heard she was famous, so there had to be a reason she acted like such a jerk. The bet was simple. If he lost, she could have the appointment slot. Anisha attempted to apologize for him, acknowledging that he had completely lost his mind. However, if it was a real bet, Gayun had to risk something too. Juryong appreciated her intelligence and then asked if she knew how to shadow box. It was a basic close-range combat drill, where the objective was to touch the other person first or force them into a disadvantageous position to win. If he lost, she would get the time slot, which worked well since there was little chance of serious injury. But if she lost, she would have to give him her seat as president once he entered the school. That sounded completely insane. There was no way she would agree to that. Yet, the idea intrigued her enough that she accepted. Only after that did she finally ask for the boy's name, realizing they couldn't discuss it in the hallway. They moved to a workshop where gear durability was tested, and soon both of them were ready. Gayun was confident she would win, while Juryeon appeared just as self-assured. Anisha, however, was a nervous wreck. To her, this competition felt pointless since their issue had already been settled. On top of that, Juryeon was badly hurt. Even if he somehow won, Gayun would never truly step down. Juryeon calmly stated that he wasn't trying to win right now. Anisha had no idea how to respond. Even at his best, he shouldn't stand a chance. Gayun was far too strong, so why make the bet at all? The protagonist reassured her not to worry. He understood her confusion, but he urged her to trust him more. In the end, it wouldn't be a bad trade. Anisha still couldn't figure out what he was aiming for. She guessed he planned to lose on purpose just to bring out Gayun's better side, but even that idea sounded too foolish to be true. Sunwoo said all he could do was apologize. He knew Gayun was supposed to lead people, but instead of being open, she continued to be brutally harsh. He apologized to Anisha once more, and she reiterated that it wasn't necessary. Still, none of this would have happened if Juryeon hadn't been so stubborn as well. Sungwoo, however, didn't completely agree with Gayun's perspective. Even without knowing the boy, he could sense that MC was unusually confident. Then Gayun mentioned that he must have already noticed her plan. She would only use one arm to make things a little fairer. Juryeon dismissed that idea, saying it would only give her an excuse if she lost. That bold answer intrigued her even more, and she settled into position. Then, in an instant, she vanished. He barely had time to react, but he managed to dodge the first strike. This stunned both Anisha and Sungwoo, though for very different reasons. Anisha was stunned by how quickly Gayun moved. Her attack was nearly impossible to see. In this kind of training, someone has to risk leaving an opening, but Gayun didn't hesitate for even a second. She attacked at full speed, driven by her pride. Sarum knew she could never have reacted that fast. Then the tailor finally speaks. Han asks if anyone else has mentioned this before. He wants to know if this student is truly preparing to transfer to the warrior school. According to the records he received, the boy is clearly gifted, but seeing him in person exceeds all of Han's expectations. He used to be a spirited adventurer too, and he can tell that Juryeon isn't trying to show off. He's trying to figure out exactly who he's facing. Gayun is already strong for her age, and with a bit more experience, she would be able to match the lower-ranked fighters. The protagonist wants to know what level he's aiming for and how far away he still is. So far, he has dodged everything with impressive skill. After avoiding several hits, he finally creates a bit of space. Gayun comments that it has been a while since anyone has managed to dodge her for this long since she joined the school. She's honestly impressed. She never thought he'd hold out this well, and his arm isn't the only issue. The way he looks now, he's nowhere near full strength. However, Juryeon tells her she hasn't seen his best yet, so she shouldn't jump to conclusions. Then, in a quieter voice, she admits she noticed how fast he was against the Horn Horror. She watched that video repeatedly, captivated by the unknown hero. As she returns to reality, she suggests a draw, proposing that they can finish this another day. Once he gets into the school and fully recovers, they can continue. She doesn't want this to end here. Her uncle can step in if needed, but Juryeon doesn't buy that. His confidence throws her off, and she still can't read him. He's not accepting a draw, especially with the student council president position on the line. If he's not backing down, then there's no point in wasting time. He gets ready to continue, but all three of them think the same thing. He's bluffing, giving up the best opening he's had so far as the wager begins. That's a shame because she likes people with drive, but what he just showed wasn't drive, it was stupidity. Juryeon gives her a faint smile and steps forward, making the first move. Now, he's the one attacking. To her own surprise, Juryeon becomes completely absorbed in the moment, catching even her uncle off guard. She puts everything into a strike, but barely misses her target. Sarom realizes he hadn't been holding back after all, which means the tailor had misjudged him entirely. MC wasn't just measuring himself against Yan. In that brief exchange, he studied her movements and mimicked them. He's a monster. This has stopped being about winning or losing. What he truly desires is Jan's technique. As he completes the attack, he remarks that this is how she did it. Growing up as a smuggler, he lived by one rule: never make a deal at a loss. She shouldn't just stand there watching. He still wants to see more. Technique isn't just about hitting hard enough to drop someone. It's about refining every movement so a person can maximize their physical potential. This includes how they breathe and even how they step. Timing is crucial. People spend years and sometimes their entire lives striving for perfection. They learn through repetition, making mistakes, and trying again. Then that knowledge gets passed down, allowing the next group to improve it even further. No matter how talented one may be, they cannot surpass the limits of knowledge alone. Yun was born with talent, which allowed her to grow strong on her own. However, after puberty, her growth slowed, and she faced a harsh truth, a wall she could not overcome. If he wanted to get stronger, he had to break down his own walls as well. So, he tears off the sling that has been holding him back. He asks her why she is hesitating when he has already made himself clear. He is confident he will enter the school, and she has already said she would gladly teach a rookie like him. Maybe the real reason she's stopping now is that she doesn't want to lose, and he understands that. This leaves her speechless for a moment. Then she asks her uncle if he remembers her previous request. An attack squad wanted to recruit her, and he had advised her to meet with them to build her reputation. She says she'll do it, but in return, he can't stop her now. This makes him nervous, and he asks what she's planning. Yun turns back to Jae-rong and says that if he wants to see her dodge, then she'll show him. Now it's his job to make her avoid his attack, but she's already advancing with a kick aimed at him. He watches the strike closely, waiting for the opening. Without taking the hit, he finds it. Every move has a start, an end, and a transition between them. If you read those parts closely, you can anticipate what comes next. Yun uses this to her advantage, skipping certain steps to trick anyone watching her. This tactic makes her next move difficult to predict and gives the impression that she is faster than she truly is. This style was developed over decades by Yun's father. He became famous for using it perfectly. The technique is called Flash, an extremely fast movement style, and Jae-ryung just executed it twice in a row in a manner even he hasn't fully mastered. You can't replicate something like this just by understanding the concept. It takes flexibility, reflexes, and most of all time. One mistake, and everything can fall apart. Even her father didn't master it until after he turned 20, and that was at his peak. It took him 3 months just to start understanding it. He had to refine his skills just to spar with his niece. Yet this boy is already doing it with ease. He's nearly out of energy, but he still moves like someone in perfect condition. There's a look of satisfaction on his face, as if he's already certain he can grow even stronger. It's not a typical way to learn, but he has a compelling reason to pursue more power. And now he understands exactly how to achieve it. He didn't learn out of obligation. He learned because he discovered it was fun. At this point, he doesn't even feel his injuries or the strain in his lungs. All he wants is to keep pushing Jae-ryung. She quickly realizes she's in trouble as he pressures her with the technique he just learned. He's about to make contact, but she has no answer, which forces Han to step in. The whole place goes silent as Han positions himself right between them. Jae-rong had told him not to interfere, but she feels relieved it ended before he had to do more. Even so, it's frustrating because Jae-young admits she lost the bet, but he says the same thing about himself. Now, neither side can settle it. She claims she wouldn't use her hands, but he never agreed to that condition. Hands or not, he still got hit. Maybe she's expressing it out of pride, but honestly, she doesn't believe she's that amazing. Then her uncle suggests they don't need to decide a winner at this moment. He blames himself for allowing things to escalate this far, and considering Jae-rong's condition, he acknowledges that continuing would be dangerous. He suggests they call it a draw and treat it as a lesson for both of them. Once the boy is fully healed, they can have a proper match. If that's his decision, Jae-ryung glares at him and tells him to listen. They will meet again at school, and if he fails to get in or loses to someone else before facing her, she will never forgive him. Regardless of the outcome, the fight was a significant learning experience for him. As she heads out, Ga-rayan asks for Serom's name, and Serom responds with it. Ga-rayan expresses her desire to apologize if Serom is the one supporting the protagonist. While she isn't sure how skilled Serom is as an adventurer, it's clear that she is far from useless. Ga-rayan recognizes Serom's keen eye for people, noting that MC wasn't the only one who enjoyed the day. Now, the two of them sit on a couch, waiting together. The waiting is driving him crazy. Serom feels relieved that he doesn't need a hospital after all, though he almost seems to wish he did. He is also surprised that Ga Reyan admitted she lost. From what Serom observed, Jae-ryung won, but he doesn't agree. In his eyes, Jae-ryung broke the rules first. The moment he took off the sling to attack, neither of them was truly fighting to win anymore, making him the first to cross that line. By the end, he was going all out, and if his hit had landed, she could have been badly hurt. He says that if he were in her place, he would have used his hands too. There was no other option. Serom asks what would have happened if both of them had fought at full power. For someone who didn't want him to fight, she seemed pretty caught up in the idea. Then, he rises from the couch and realizes they've arrived. Finally, two people come in, and Serom turns to look. It's Han, thanking them for waiting so long. He even brought pizza for them. After they eat, he apologizes, explaining that his niece caused trouble and that he really should have taken them out somewhere nice. However, Jae-ryung is already grateful, saying that for him, food just needs to be plentiful. As an adventurer, he can eat 5 times more than usual, a fact Serom hadn't even considered. He had been unconscious for 4 days without food. Han then explains that his workshop doesn't use leather, but rather a material similar to it. They create gear from fibers taken from high-class monsters, skillfully combining them to craft the best equipment for each individual. This material is lighter and tougher than leather. After seeing Jae-ryung, Han already knows the perfect mix of materials and the ideal outfit that would suit him best. He's seen what he can do and already has his personal details, but one question still bothers him. The final step in production involves soaking the material in oil to enhance its strength and durability. Serom was aware of this, which is why she requested the highest rate material. The problem is that, right now, obtaining that oil is nearly impossible. It comes from the voracious whale of the deep sea. They used to have complete control over this resource, but after some unexpected troubles, nobody hunts those creatures anymore. There are other options they can consider, and in practice, the difference is minimal. However, that would involve breaking the contract and making a mistake that should never have occurred. If they decide to back out now, that's acceptable as well. He can even refer them to a top leather craftsman instead. He's also eager to make up for the time they lost. Yaoi Jae-ryung responds that this is fine with him. If the quality gap is small, he doesn't mind. He doesn't even use fancy gear after all. More importantly, he wants equipment made by Han. Then he inquires if Han was the one who trained his niece. He doesn't know much about gear, but he would trust it more if it came from someone strong. If that's the case, he wants Han to make it. Serom has a feeling something is up that day. Han mentions that it's already been 10 years since he retired, but he still appreciates hearing that. The compliment clearly makes him happy. Serom, meanwhile, has no idea where all the food is gone. Since everyone is trusting him, he promises to create the best equipment he can. He then expresses his frustration about what happened last week during a hunt, which he had hoped would yield some great materials. He asks if they've heard of the Imperial Wasp, and Serom mentions royal jelly. However, that monster also produces another material that equipment makers highly value. It's called black wax, the substance used to shield the queen, and only a small number of them can create it. Han shows Yoo Jae-ryung his phone and asks if this is what he meant. The screen displays a picture that Han had the sketch after losing his old phone. He is surprised that the boy has actually seen it in person. The truth is, Yo, the protagonist, has smuggled it before, but he claims he saw it at Serom's house. It seems rich people really do have everything. Now, Yoo Jae-ryung is on his way to the hospital, where there's someone he needs to meet before going in. It'll take about an hour, and the manager should be free by then too. Han asks if he has eaten already. He has, but he's still willing to eat again, as long as Han helps pay, of course. The door to Yoo Jae-ryung's room opens slowly. He says he has to hang up for now, but tells them to call once they arrive. The plan for his day just changed. Zeke mentions that it's been a while, and Cavallino suggests they continue their conversation outside. The two had already spoken at the hospital 11 days ago. Making a scene in MC's room wouldn't help. A strike team led by one man had fallen apart, and if that were all, they might have chosen to remain silent. Cavallino remarks that Zeke still knows how to get under people's skin. They used to be on the same side, but things are clearly not friendly now. Just seeing Cavallino again gets Zeke worked up. Cavallino, also known as Jawan, is a retired adventurer who once ranked 5th. Since they're allies now, he tells Zeke to stop talking and follow him. Serom begins to wonder how many more surprises her friend has in store. She also wants to ask about the black wax, realizing it must have come from the chest, and she thinks she should have known that all along. Yoo Jae-ryung didn't even know what it was, but he still thanked her for handling it quietly. Since Argroth, nothing has gone smoothly, and now she asks if he's busy. He is. He has someone to meet. If it's not too far, she offers him a ride. Just then, her phone starts buzzing. It's her Uncle Zeke. She asks Yu Jae-ryung to wait a moment, and he agrees, as he still has time before his meeting. The tailor comments that the nights are getting cold this time of year and inquires if Riem has already left. She only stepped away to make a call, so she'll be back soon. He replies that that's fine. He just stepped outside for a quiet smoke when he mentioned that the skill he used today is called Flash. It was created by his brother DIF's father, and he played a role in its development as well. This revelation instantly embarrasses the protagonist, prompting him to quickly apologize. He acknowledges that he should have guessed the creator's family was present and expresses regret for copying the work without permission. However, the tailor hasn't come to complain, as there's no exclusive claim over something like that. While they are careful about who they teach, learning by observation isn't wrong, and there's no reason to feel ashamed of it. If a skill can be copied, it's only natural for more people to use it. However, this particular skill isn't easy to replicate at all. Initially, he believed Yu Jae-ryung's fundamentals were weak due to a lack of proper training, but after witnessing that fight, he changed his perspective. If MC had ever been lazy, he wouldn't have held on to the fundamentals so well. He may not know what kind of life taught him this, but he does have some valuable advice. He is talented, and with enough time and effort, he'll discover what he's truly capable of. For him, becoming a great adventurer won't be the hard part. That kind of potential is real and within reach. But this world doesn't always celebrate prodigies. Some people will admire him and offer their support, while others will be consumed by jealousy and attempt to exploit or undermine him. When Yu Jae-ryung asks if that means he should hide his talent, the answer is a resounding no. He should never hide who he is. He probably couldn't even if he tried, and doing so would only make people look down on him. Instead, he should live according to his beliefs and reveal his true self, a genius that no one can match. As long as he possesses the ability, he should give everything he has and absorb every useful technique he can find. Even if that causes trouble, he still shouldn't lower his head like he just did. He should look up and speak clearly. In the end, the strongest determine what's right and wrong. If he learns a technique and makes it his own, he can claim it as his. The tailor understands that this may sound harsh, but among adventurers, strength is paramount. His niece embodies this idea more than anyone else, and he has no intention of softening her approach. She is demanding, but no one will ever underestimate her, and he believes Yu Jae-ryung should adopt the same mindset. Just then, Sang Kram returns and calls for her friend. She is surprised to see the tailor there as well, but mentions that her uncle wants to speak with him. Although she doesn't know the reason, she emphasizes that he really should go. She already knew he would be there, so she asked if the boy was around too, as she wanted to talk to him. He takes the phone, and Zeke apologizes for interrupting something. He didn't expect to contact him this soon, but a problem has come up, and he needs to see him right away. Yu Jae-ryung is caught off guard, but he understands the urgency and agrees to come immediately. They navigate an abandoned route, a hidden path that leads into the dungeon through the subway access lines. This route is under their control. Zeke is waiting there in torn clothes, and he informs them that someone is inside. He didn't want to call Yu Jae-ryung, but that person insisted they would rather die than let Zeke heal them, leaving him with no choice. The protagonist doesn't know the full story, but it's clear that those two don't get along. It seems Zeke and the manager had some kind of falling out. The injured man jokes that if he had known MC would arrive this quickly, he would have asked for his shirt too. However, MC has no idea who he is. The man compliments MC's eyes and asks if he's the one who sliced Zeke's cheek. By now, he's already known among the strike team as the boy who defeated a high-level monster. Their captain seems excited to meet him, but Zeke quickly cuts the chatter short. They're leaving, and there's no reason to stay any longer. Once Zeke's group and the others head out, Yu Jae-ryung approaches the door that held so much hostility. The moment he steps inside, he finds the director waiting for him. He looks mostly fine, which contradicts how serious Zeke made it sound. However, the director insists the damage is serious. His body is wrecked, and so is his pride. He calls Zeke pathetic, but decides to follow him anyway. Noticing that Yu Jae-ryung isn't alone, the director asks for a small favor just in case. He inquires if the protagonist has a lighter. If not, he should grab one from below. The director sounds tired, so MC decides to take action. However, when he looks down, he realizes that everything beneath him is already engulfed in flames. At that moment, the director begins to speak. If Zeke claimed they fought, that's not entirely accurate. The director was angry as well and had every intention of burning him. He then added that the muscular kid fought well. Despite not being a tank, he held the line, and in 10 years, he could become a great warrior. Yu Jae-ryung wanted to ask more, but Zeke already knew where this was headed. He wanted to quit smuggling, and if he was to become a hunter, there was one condition. Within a month, he must master what the director teaches him. If he can't keep up, he should consider giving up, as this path will be much harder and very different from what he knows. This leaves the protagonist stunned. The director truly wants to teach him magic? The only thing Yu Jae-young has seen him do so far is rise into the air and smash things apart. So he asks the obvious question, why bring this up all of a sudden? Before he receives an answer, the director suddenly collapses into MC's arms. In that moment, he realizes the man is truly in bad shape. His body is cold and worn out, and he asks him to carry him. The story then shifts to Songwoo, who reflects on how difficult it was at first to grind beans and make coffee by himself. However, once he gave it a try, he found it easier than he had expected, despite making a few mistakes along the way. If he had known that sooner, he would have started long ago, and while working, he could have enjoyed it too. However, the other man told him not to say that anymore, as it didn't sound like they were on the same page. That man was Lee Muan, 26 years old, and director Yu Sung confirmed it. Still, if they wanted to fix anything, they had to take action. While Jae-young's father poured coffee, the director stated they needed to catch that same Dugana high. There wasn't much else to do. Mark the targets, wipe them out, and collect the raid. But Yu Sung said he couldn't keep going. They both understood how serious his condition was, and they also knew he didn't have much time left. Trying to stay calm, Yu Ying handed his friend a cup of coffee, but it was clear he had snapped. Some bastards were taking his partner away from him. He began to cry, insisting that there had to be more than one Jugana high with them. He might end up enduring more pointless pain, but if that creature was still alive because the dragon was with them, the director would take matters into his own hands. He would gather a raid and hunt that monster down, no matter what it took, determined to make the bastard fall at his feet. Right then, our young hero stepped out of one of the rooms, catching the director completely off guard. He had no idea his friend had a son. At that same moment, the young protagonist greeted Uncle Yuan, who told the boy to go play while they talked. Once Jerian left the room, Yu Sung explained that Zeke had created a painkiller formula for him. However, he warned that it would gradually become addictive, and over time, the pain would erode his thinking, judgment, and memory. Even if he managed to resist its effects, in 3 or 4 years, he might not even recognize the person standing in front of him. Yu Sung said he would do everything he could, but he earnestly asked Yu Jae-young to stop the headmaster. It felt like the first real favor he had ever requested. If anything happened to him, he wouldn't be able to raise this child, so he begged Yu Jae-young to watch over him instead. The man known as the Dragon Slayer, who had rarely shown weakness throughout his life, was now asking for help. He made this request so that our hero could have a normal future. He wanted him to be truly happy, to live in a place free from adventurers, and he sincerely asked Yu Jae-young for assistance. Yu Jae-young couldn't turn him down, so he agreed. At that moment, the director finally woke up and asked what time it was. It wasn't too late, around 10:30, which meant he had been out for about 3 hours. Even so, our hero brought him something he had received at age 14, a gift from their time working together. It was a syringe, essentially an emergency healing potion. The headmaster mentioned that it wasn't top grade, but it worked quickly. As long as you weren't fatally injured, it could get you back on your feet in just a few hours. This was a rare backup item, valuable for adventurers. However, it was still possible to obtain one occasionally, so he advised him to buy the next one with his own money. Then the director asked if he wanted to turn back. If he had changed his mind, he needed to say so now. The problem could still be resolved, but once he started, there would be no turning back. Paying his father's hospital bills wasn't as impossible as it seemed. To him, allowing a kid to take on all the responsibility felt disgusting. However, Jerian insisted that wasn't the point. He wasn't particularly fond of his father, and his father hadn't left any money behind. No one knew what could happen next. The director believed the boy simply didn't trust him, but the protagonist felt differently. That wasn't the case at all. He had always believed he needed the power to protect himself and his father with his own hands, regardless of what happened. He thanked him for the syringe, saying he would save it for when he really needed it. Back in the present, the director assumed our hero would treasure it, but he never imagined the boy still hadn't used it. Fortunately, he hadn't sold it on the black market either. At that moment, the director realized our hero probably wouldn't believe him. Even if he never became a smuggler or decided to quit this line of work, he would still cover his father's bills. Jerian was confident of that. He was completely sure that, no matter what happened to him, the boss would never abandon his father. That certainty allowed him to move forward without hesitation. The headmaster stated that the moment he turned a 14-year-old boy into a tool, he had also betrayed his father. However, MC was certain it wasn't the director who had done that. It was his own choice. Even without assistance, he would have found a way. He had always questioned the same thing. If he could take care of himself, then why was the director helping him at all? Those thoughts had followed him his whole life. Then the headmaster stood up and revealed that Yu Sung's only request had been for him not to raise Jerian to become an adventurer. However, it wasn't that simple, as even in service, Jerian had never been obedient. You couldn't bury the son of a dragon slayer, with talent tied to the abyss, in an ordinary life. To be honest, the headmaster hated this world from the bottom of his heart. He despised the bastards who had wronged his father, the fools who forgot him because they believed those freaks, and the ones who knew the truth yet stood by, making excuses. Those are the people the director wants gone. Our hero began to stand, remarking that Zeke seemed somewhat normal, but the director interrupted him. Zeke would never catch Duganahi. His methods were too simplistic. It's not just adventurers who need to be prepared when hunting a hidden dragon, as dragons are a plague. Even if you spot one, you can't simply leave it alone, because pureblood dragons are designed to cause massive destruction. While some members of Zeke's squad may be decent, the rest of the freaks who abandoned his father certainly aren't. Even if the world were to end tomorrow, the director would never forget what our hero lost, nor would he ever accept what he refuses to believe. For now, Zeke was held back by the law, but those bastards would still aid the dragons and drag him down. In the end, he would pay for it. 20 years ago, his father had destroyed that nightmare, but it had returned. Lies replaced lies, and all those rotten idiots contributed to everything falling apart. That's why he never wanted Zeke to become an adventurer. He then handed our hero a sheet of paper, stating it was the account number for 4 people. Since the first day until now, all the money from his work had been sent there. Our hero had no idea what the director meant, but he said that from the start, this place was meant to be his someday, so he could open his own business when he grew up. Back then, the director planned to teach him skills and knowledge, things more practical and dangerous than what adventurers typically learn. He told him to call once he was done with the cast and with them. After that, he didn't teach him magic for a month. For now, he advised him to focus on the entrance exams, even if he thought they were pointless. As he moved to leave, our hero remarked that he didn't have to offer him that chance. He believed the director might change his mind, and if he truly didn't want him to become an adventurer, the director paused and acknowledged that was true. However, he added that those were only his feelings, and they didn't matter much. 3 years ago, just like now, the only thing that mattered was what our protagonist wanted to do. Meanwhile, in Old Yongsan, that same girl from the city incident reflected on how they always ended up gathering like this. She began to wonder if it was time for them to find a place of their own. Got money? She asked. Still, not even half of them showed up to meetings like this, but if they had a place, they could at least enjoy a warm shower. It was obvious these two knew each other well. They kept joking around, acting as if no one else was nearby. The girl teased him, saying people thought that without a Perkin, he would whine like a lost puppy or hold back tears while pretending to look tough. Her words really got under his skin, which was probably exactly what she wanted. He was already starting to look ridiculous. He became so angry that his aura began to leak out, and he snapped, insisting they really thought he would be punished for fighting her. You could call that a reckless move, but the girl was also ready to throw down. Then a man stepped in and told them to stop. Although he wasn't going to interfere, he wanted everyone to remember they were there because of one body. Even if he didn't like the idea, he wasn't going to handle it alone just because they wanted to fight. Then he raised his hands and admitted he had acted foolishly and with pride, only responding to that crazy Dorlin. But the girl shot back, saying he only survived because someone was there for him, and for some reason, that person didn't answer the phone at all yesterday. So what if that's true? He replied. In that situation, there wasn't really any need for more information. Why should he listen when something might come back and kill all the rescuers anyway? The operation had succeeded, but he didn't want to take on any extra risk. The tough guy pointed out that successful wasn't exactly the right word, since 12 people still died. Even that didn't receive proper attention. For 4 straight days, the news focused solely on those boys, our heroes, and not a word was mentioned about the stolen trucks they managed to take. The leader explained that this made sense. Without those two, the Hunter Association would never have avoided a full disaster. Their security for transporting 5-star monsters was a disaster, resulting in the deaths of innocent people. Consequently, the media focused on the 2 boys in the car, while the victims' families were exploited to help cover up the association's mistake. The girl snapped that she could have just killed all of them, but the leader warned her that doing so would only get her labeled a terrorist. He pointed out that then people would stop discussing the association's failure and instead focus on chasing criminals. He added that if they failed again, everything would collapse. The big guy muttered that maybe that's why accidents keep happening. They still had another job to handle today when one more member showed up. He dragged the man in on a chain, referring to it as his little hobby. They had caught a hunter who had been hiding something from his own team. He acted like a hero in public, but last night, he was caught trying to sell a trophy through shady channels. His name was Ogong Hayek, ranked 97th, and many people considered him dangerous. Even as the youngest member of his squad, he was betraying his own side and secretly moving loot. The name meant nothing to some of them, so one explained that it referred to a hidden hunter base near a dungeon, a safe room stocked with gear and items, as well as a place to rest where monsters can't get in. That's what those bases are for, but not everyone uses them that way. When asked to repeat himself, the captive revealed that there would be a secret party there, attended by his team leader, other teammates, and even civilians. The big guy interrupted, asking if they were planning to kill him, while the hunter continued speaking. He mentioned that friends of their group bring in guests, and the lineup changes each time. Usually it consists of rich thrill-seekers, businessmen, celebrities, and people who drink and use relaxing potions. The girl thought that sounded wild, but the boss recognized it for what it truly was. People bored with ordinary pleasures, seeking bigger thrills inside dungeons where hunters guard them and no outsiders can see. The chained hunter insisted he had no choice. The first time he went, they told him everyone participated and that he wasn't the only one involved. The man holding the chain stepped closer and told him to stop shaking if he still had the guts to tell the truth. Maybe it wasn't too late. However, if he had hurt people there again, then the boss was sorry, but he would have to die. Their plan was to leave no one alive in that place, corrupt hunters and civilians who abused dungeon attacks for fun. A headline like that would shock the entire world. However, some were surprised that the boss wouldn't join them, even though the mission seemed straightforward. After all, their targets were just the famous Hunter Squad, which included 2 members of the Golden Elite and 6 rankers. He said those enemies would be strong enough to burn off all their stress. Then, he encouraged them to cut loose and eliminate as many as they wanted. When the bodies were found, everyone realized their world wasn't safe at all, as it would soon be time for Squad Scar. A month later, Jiri Yong was driving in, reflecting on how much had happened lately, even though his body still hadn't fully recovered. By then, he had arrived at the spot where the elf girl was waiting. She reminded him that this was his last free weekend before the exam, despite his earlier promise to train here with his headmaster. Just as she was about to say she would get ready too, another passenger appeared. Jungkook, the guy Jiri Yong had met at the hospital that morning, stepped out from behind the car. Since they were already talking, he expressed his desire to help as well, sharing what they knew would be useful, especially since they would be in the same class. Jungkook appeared excited, though also a little intense. They all needed to understand that this place featured a full training hall, a pool, a rest area, free food and drinks, and even a gym equipped with special machines designed for hunters. Sarnium added that the dorm rooms were located on the 5th floor, and each room had its own shower. If that wasn't enough, there was even a spa on the 4th floor. Jiri Yong was stunned that all of this belonged to her uncle, but she urged him not to make a big deal out of it. After all, some high-ranking hunters have purchased entire mountains to create training grounds. Her uncle comes here with coworkers to train, and on other days, they can use the place freely. Then Siri Young asked why Jungkook was here at all. He replied that it was rude to talk about a classmate like that, but Saddleheim shot back that she didn't know what he had told Jungkook to make him come, and she doubted Jungkook saw him as a classmate anyway. Jiri Young asked if she had ever talked to him normally. She replied that it wasn't just her. In fact, she would bet that no one in their class, and maybe even in their entire department, really talks to him. Everyone knows he thinks too highly of himself, and if he ignores the top students, he would certainly ignore the rest even more. Right then, the protagonist asked Jungkook why he was still standing off by himself. They hadn't come here to hang around, so the big guy finally ran over to join them. The MC mentioned he would check out all the equipment later, but Jungkook admitted he had mostly come because he wanted to try gear from a new brand. While he talked, Jiri Young was surprised that Jungkook had actually shown up, just like Sairam, but he didn't see any problem with it. If they had issues with each other, they could just address them directly. Jungkook mentioned that he didn't really have any kind of relationship with the other kids at school. He found Sairam to be a little scary, but also really cool. He had to ask if he was seriously talking about that same Sairam. Jungkook confirmed that he was. He explained that she was sharp, and from the first year on, plenty of people didn't like her, but she never bent for anyone and always held her head high. He didn't care much about grades. He just thought she was strong and steady. Once Jungkook stood beside Sairam, Jiri Young suggested that the three of them train together this weekend. Sairam mentioned that the protagonist needed to prepare for the practical test, but Jungkook replied that it didn't sound too difficult. He noted it was mostly about memorizing and analyzing rather than requiring skill use or hands-on practice. Even she had said that the key was proper analysis. All the examples they had seen so far were simple, and they already knew the exam site, the topic, and everything else. He said that didn't mean the test was unimportant, but since the three of them were already there, they could gain much more from training together than he and Sairam could alone. Over the past month, he had encountered strong individuals more often than ever before. He had learned things he never would have figured out on his own, and he wanted to train with them seriously. This way, they could share their expertise and assess each other's skills, benefiting all three of them. However, Jerry Young awkwardly concluded the conversation by labeling them as outcasts, a comment that was unnecessary. He then added that if he were accepted into the hero school and made new friends, he would want to share his knowledge with them as well. He wasn't sure how things worked now, but he figured the other students probably felt the same way. Sairam admitted she had never really thought about it before. For a moment, all three of them sensed that hero school might be a place where they could gain not just experience, but real friends as well. MC mentioned that he would likely enter their school, and even as Sairam repeated a second year, it could still benefit her if she wanted to continue learning and training. Sairam acknowledged his point, but felt she didn't have anything valuable to teach the two of them. Jerry Ong then pointed out one area where they all still struggled, using magic. She could, although combining it smoothly with other actions remained challenging. Sairam tried to downplay her abilities, insisting she was just a good archer and not particularly skilled in magic. Zhong Bao, wearing a serious expression, replied that if that were the case, he definitely wanted to learn from her. He planned to master it someday anyway. Sairam was left speechless. While Jungkook thought she had handled it perfectly, it sounded natural to him. 15 minutes later in the fight room, Jungkook mentioned that he needed to call his parents, and Jerry Ong was still amazed that this room had basically everything. There were clothes in every size. He joked about wanting to take a suit home, but Sairam asked if he was doing all this on purpose, taking care of both her and Sairam as well. She thanked him, saying that training together really meant a lot to her. She never thought she would make friends beyond him and Si Hongwoo. The protagonist told her she had already figured out he wasn't that bad, and he wanted to say one more thing. However, they were interrupted when Anisha arrived, expressing that she had a bad feeling. She had been on her way to the gym, and the moment she saw Si Hongwoo, she understood why. Hongwoo was stunned and asked why Anisha was there at all. Anisha explained that her uncle wasn't around today, and after what he said last time, she knew they could come when no one else was there. This revelation made Sairam pause. Was there something going on that she didn't know? Was Anisha that close to him? Sairam introduced Jae Ryung to Anisha, explaining that Anisha was her cousin. Although people call her Ani, they are the same age. Anisha waved, surprised that Sairam had brought a friend, and expressed her happiness for her. She also introduced a sophomore from their school, Jong, explaining that she had invited some upperclassmen for the weekend to talk and train together. Only those with free time were able to come, and she mentioned that it was even better with MC here as well. Anisha added that Sairam doesn't like big groups, so she probably wanted to leave. If this happened tomorrow in front of everyone, people might think they were pushing her out. Sairam tried to object, but Anisha urged her not to be stubborn, insisting that since it was safe, she should join them. This was a good opportunity for her. Then Jae Ryung chimed in, stating that they would all be shooting together anyway. Another friend had arrived as well, but he was still on the phone, so they would meet him soon. One of the sophomores looked at him and said he hadn't seen him before, asking who he was. The protagonist explained that he didn't attend a special school, just a regular one. He was a first-year student planning to transfer to the hero school this year. He mentioned that Sairam was helping him prepare for the entrance exam. Although he had been focused on something else for a long time and was still behind, he was determined to work hard. This made everyone laugh and mock him. Jae Ryung was about to suggest they train together when the sophomore interrupted him, insisting he get in a car and go home before it got dark. Anisha's group chimed in, stating they didn't care whether his story about transferring later was true or not. They claimed he was simply embarrassed. He talked about going to a normal school, but he made up that whole story. Since they were students from a hero school, they believed an average kid couldn't keep up with them. They thought if he stayed around, he would only embarrass himself and end up disappointed. They suggested he should find tutors who matched his own level. MC tried to answer, but suddenly a strike landed hard on his face. Jaryung cried out in pain, exclaiming that it hurt. Everyone knew Jang wasn't actually trying to kill him. Even unofficial hunters can't just beat up normal people outside of dungeons. That would still be a crime. He only meant to throw a threatening punch to scare him and demonstrate the gap between them. But even Jang looked confused that he had actually hit him since he had kept his distance. It made no sense. With a normal reaction, Yaryong should have leaned back. Instead, he moved into it. Now he was acting hurt, mumbling that he only wanted to be friends, and he got punched for it. Then he said there was no helping it. He'd have to defend himself now. Glaring at him like a threat, the training area was equipped with surveillance cameras that recorded everything from multiple angles. Hunters used those videos to study and improve their movements. Sarim realized that Jaryong had taken that hit on purpose. Although she didn't know why, she now had proof. The footage would clearly show that Jang struck first. Jang had no idea what kind of protection the protagonist was referring to, so MC began to exaggerate, claiming he was a sensitive, quiet person who bottles things up, gets depressed, and can't sleep when something bad happens. Jang snapped back, saying it was just a light hit, so why make such a big deal out of it? Pointing directly at him, Jaryong insisted that wasn't an apology. Jang hit him out of nowhere, leaving him unsure whether to call the police or go straight to the headmaster. Jang attempted to calm the situation and asked what he wanted: money, or did he genuinely want to train with them? He stated he had already made it clear that unless he returned the same amount of damage he had received, he wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Jang told him to go ahead and hit him, confident that a boy like the protagonist couldn't do much damage. In his mind, Jaryong was just a regular student who could only throw basic punches. However, the moment the MC raised his hand, Jang suddenly envisioned what would happen next and imagined all his teeth getting knocked out. The only option he had was to jump away. He pretended to be confused and insisted that wasn't the deal. Meanwhile, the others believed Jang should have simply taken the hit. Sure, hero school students would normally dodge Jaryong just to mess with him, but this time, Jang backed off instinctively. What he saw wasn't a weak kid. It felt like a monster radiating immense pressure. Observing this, Anisha realized that backing away wasn't enough anymore. The right move was to apologize properly and pay compensation, otherwise it would just lead to a beating. Jang quickly stated that he could apologize and admit he had acted foolishly. However, Jaryong told him to choose between sparring or a real fight. At that moment, Jang realized something was wrong. The protagonist shot up from his seat so quickly that Jang cursed and yelled in surprise. They would see who was truly pathetic, but MC was already right beside him. He moved so quickly that it looked like there were two of him, causing Jang to swing at the illusion. A moment later, Jaryong's fist smashed into Jang's nose. He hadn't even used his full power and then asked if they were done already. That was more than enough to crush Jang's pride. He lost his temper and began throwing punch after punch, but none of them connected. Then Jaryong stepped in close, mocking him for failing to handle even a few hits, before delivering a kick that sent Jang crashing to the floor. At first, everyone thought Jang was pretending to struggle in order to lure him in, but then they realized he was genuinely overwhelmed. Was he really a hero school student? Jaryong remarked that, compared to the opponents he had faced before, this felt completely different. He reminded them that he had wanted to talk it out without fighting, but nobody seemed to care. Then he thanked Jang for the match, mentioned that he had taken plenty of damage, and even extended a hand to help him up. However, Jang just looked away. The protagonist continued, stating that a sophomore should have been stronger than this. If he had known it would be this easy, he could have simply ignored him. Then, he asked for the camera footage. Xiaobei couldn't understand what else he was planning to do to annoy Jang, but it was clear the video would reveal that Jaryong had held back and slowed himself down. Xiaobei was stunned. Had he really planned all this from the start just to get a recording? Jang had been targeting MC the moment he walked in, and the girl in the dress was the one who had brought those students here. She wasn't even trying to hide how much she despised Siren. After a brief pause, Jaryong continued. He said he didn't know what school life was like for them, but from what Xiaobei had told him, this kind of time mattered a lot. Honestly, he had expected them to at least pretend to be decent. He admitted that his self-esteem wasn't great, but he wasn't about to sit there and take mockery from jerks like them. This might be nothing to them, but for him, this part of his life mattered a great deal. He truly believed they would all grow faster together. While they were still talking, they noticed the same sophomore running after them from behind, yelling for attention. In that moment, Anisha used her magic to pin him in place. She explained that she hadn't brought him along because he was strong. Rather, she had expected him to perform better. Instead, he had embarrassed himself in front of everyone. This made it clear to the group that Anisha had taken matters into her own hands. He tried to conserve his energy to unleash it all at once, but it still made no difference. Siren noticed one peculiar detail. He kept staring at his hand. When they asked why, Jaryong realized the feeling was the same as during his fight with the horned horror. Then, we jump back 3 weeks. He was unpacking a box filled with his old gear, and up close, most of it looked wrecked. Kill Blood was the worst of all. It barely seemed usable anymore. Its power was simple. If the user's life was in danger, the spell would trigger. That was when he remembered the pendant in his pocket, which activated. It might be the reason he landed safely, but that burst of power still troubled him. Was it another effect of Kill Blood? It couldn't simply be some hidden power within him suddenly awakening. After all, the item in his hands was worth around 22 billion, and something that costly should have more than one ability. It was only then that he truly grasped how insane that price was. From there, we return to the moment the magic activated. He looked at his hands and realized he hadn't imagined it. The feeling was exactly the same as it had been back then, but why was it resurfacing now? Maybe it wasn't the artifact after all. The moment Anisha switched topics and insisted that he should be helping her instead of Sareem, she pointed out that Sareem had probably just paid him enough to sway his loyalty. She even claimed that whatever Sareem offered, others would pay 3 times more and cover the extra costs as well. Sareem shouted that it was nonsense, but Anisha interrupted, insisting it was a perfectly reasonable offer. She pointed out that Jaryong had already beaten one of their high school students. What stood out to her was that he acted as if he couldn't enter the school and didn't even call out her name. She figured there had to be a reason he couldn't focus on the entrance exam, but that kind of problem could be solved with money. To Anisha, that was Sareem's only real value. Then she went too far, claiming Sareem had no talent, no kindness, no reputation, nothing at all. Jaryong simply smiled and said he couldn't agree with that. At least Sareem had endurance, and he claimed to understand Anisha well enough. Someone this bitter could easily lash out at her own sister. In a moment of frustration, Anisha snapped completely and unleashed a massive wave of magic at him that barely missed. She then declared that all classes were canceled for the week. When the other high schoolers saw their weak sophomore go this far, they decided there was no point in protecting him as some kind of leader. Ultimately, they had only come to build connections. Anisha remarked that the time had been wasted but not enough to matter, and suggested they all act as if none of this had happened. Then she warned Jaryong that if he wasn't after her sister's money, he should watch himself starting next week, as this could affect his school life. He was about to respond, but Sareem interrupted him and asked what kind of magic Anisha had used. Sareem admitted that Anisha had probably staged all of this to learn more about him, as there was no way she had ever truly thought well of him before. Now, she was obsessed with anything connected to Sauron. After learning about Jaryong, it was clear that she wanted to interfere in their relationship. She would likely try to pull him away from the entrance exam group next, and that thought alone sent chills down everyone's spines. However, the protagonist wasn't focused on that. He was more concerned about the strength that vanished the moment Anisha released all her power. He finally understood that back then, it wasn't a power meant to kill the unkillable. It was strength awakened by the spell itself, a response to danger. Sauron looked at him and asked if he was okay, noting that he seemed older than usual. Jaryong lowered his fist and assured him that he was fine. More than anything, he needed to learn magic quickly. By that time, the sophomore had regained consciousness, and the first thing he saw was Gayun standing there as if nothing had happened, which only frightened him more. He had no idea why Gayun was there, but Mamos approached and offered an apology. He said he thought the guy could take one punch, but he didn't expect him to get humiliated so badly in front of everyone. The sophomore remarked that he deserved it. If anyone here was a jerk, it was him, as he had acted out in front of someone connected to the district tragedy and still dared to be rude. He insisted that the sophomore should be thankful just to be alive. That answer made Jaryong think. He hadn't expected such a harsh result, especially since he wasn't even fighting seriously. The sophomore was stunned as he explained that his movement speed was only slightly above the basics. He also lost control of his emotions and fought with anger, which made the match boring and easy to predict. The protagonist had picked up on several habits. Curious, the sophomore asked what he meant. The protagonist explained that he had already checked the camera footage while they were outside and provided specific details. He advised the sophomore to pay more attention to his center of gravity before moving his arms and to lean his body toward the foot he stepped with first. He had even typed it all into his phone. Sairo knew the high schooler must be in total shock, because Jaryong clearly wasn't asking for money. He was simply offering genuine advice. To her, it made sense. MC appreciated hearing honest criticism from seniors, but the sophomore still couldn't believe it. A minute ago, he had tried to hit him from behind, and now he was helping him improve. The protagonist insisted it didn't matter. The guy had already paid enough for his mistake, and there were no hard feelings. They were all here to train, so splitting up now would be a waste. He offered to make himself useful and told him to save his phone number so he could send the video. After Chulgong left with Jaryong, he muttered that those high schoolers were trash for running off and leaving their friend behind. That had to hurt. The two of them then met up with Sarom, who said there was still plenty to do. They needed to start spell theory. She explained it by comparing magic to fuel, noting that spells run on it and the quality of that fuel affects the outcome. Amos asked for clarification, so Gaon attempted to explain it in another way. Seiron chimed in, mentioning that she had touched on this topic before. Even if you stack up a bunch of newspapers, they can still be defeated by a single bright ember, as everyone can only handle a certain amount of magic. She then revealed that her own magic rank was C. In the mage system, that was considered quite high, sufficient to deal significant significant damage to enemies or provide substantial support to allies. She added that learning to strengthen themselves in battle would be incredibly beneficial. This excited Jaryang as he realized his abilities could improve significantly. If it worked anything like Kill Blood, it would be a game changer. He even asked if they could master it in a week. Sarum gave him a look and replied that no beginner could learn that in just 3 days and 2 nights. She had been using magic for a long time, so she knew this much for sure. Understanding the basics took at least 2 weeks, and boosting strength was only the smallest part of what they had to learn. Then, the high school student got up and offered to help, asking if Jae-young was okay with learning from a jerk like him. After all, self-enhancement was his specialty this year. By evening, he finally managed to cast the lowest-ranked spell, Fire Sprout, and he was shocked by his success. The high schooler reminded him not to get too excited. If it didn't burn at all, that would be the strange part. Almost anyone could force that spell out, even without proper skill. Jaryang asked if he should make the fire bigger or mix in water, but the sophomore told him to keep the spark going and focus inward. First, he needed to feel the magic itself. The protagonist struggled to understand how he was supposed to feel something he had never experienced before. The high schooler explained that it wasn't entirely new. Even if the protagonist didn't label it as magic, he had already been using magical power without realizing it. The energy within his body was active at that moment, making it the perfect opportunity to sense it. As soon as Jaryang closed his eyes, the sophomore urged him to focus on the feeling and not let it slip away. If he sensed anything at all, it meant he had taken the first step. While he tried to feel everything around him, the sophomore couldn't shake the thought that he never expected someone like the protagonist to lack the basics. He hoped this wouldn't take the whole weekend. Then, MC mentioned feeling a tingling sensation, as if he were just beginning to sense the world around him. A jolt runs through him, and the upperclassman is shocked because Jaryang felt magic in under a minute. He keeps expressing how incredible it is, sensing around 100 paths inside his body. There are 2 components tied to magic: the core near the navel, which generates mana, and the mana chains that transport it. There are 127 in total. While they talk, Saram asks Jungkook if he plays any instruments, as that would make this easier to understand. She explains that using magic is like playing and composing music on a piano. Jungkook looks confused, so Saram forms a D-rank spell, Thunder Fist, in her hand. She explains that she didn't chant or make hand signs because magic usually isn't flashy. Most of it happens inside the body, even when the body remains still. Just like with a piano, where you press the keys in the right order and timing to produce music, magic works the same way. Think of the mana chains as piano keys, with a spell being a song created by pressing them. Out of 127 chains, magic involves sending mana through specific ones in the correct order and at the right time. Jungkook contemplates this and then asks what happens if the order is wrong. Are there side effects? Saram explains that simple spells might still work if the mistake is minor, but the stronger or more complex the spell, the more dangerous even a tiny error can be. With Thunder Fist, for instance, a few mistakes can leave you shocked and unable to move for half a day. In the case of higher-ranked spells, a mistake can be fatal. That's why fighters protect the backline and mages need focus, which can be difficult in a real battle. Jungkook admits he has been trying to feel his magic in his spare time, but he still can't sense each chain individually. In response, Saram eagerly begins to explain once more. Jaryang observes her and realizes she becomes quite talkative when discussing something she knows well. He then stands up, leading the upperclassmen to believe he is leaving. However, the protagonist clarifies that he doesn't think he needs to continue. The oldest student is confused by this statement and insists that the MC needs to keep practicing with Fire Sprout until sensing mana feels natural. MC responds that it already does. He can't count every chain yet, but he can feel their presence. The upperclassman is skeptical, so Jaryang begins to list them. 2 chains end at the fingers on the right, 1 at the wrist, 3 more at the elbow, and 6 in the right arm. The left arm has even more, 10 chains in total. The upperclassman is left stunned. A guy who knew nothing just moments ago can already feel them clearly. He insists he's not lying. He only wants to know what comes next. He doesn't even know what to call the other guy, since they don't go to the same school. Still, for humans, the number and rough positions of the chains are mostly the same, so each one is numbered from 1 to 1. At 27, the upperclassman decides to demonstrate how the chains work. He begins by throwing a normal punch, then starts to draw on his chains, using the E-rank spell, Muscle Breakthrough. He tells Jaryang to feel the difference for himself. The upperclassman then punches straight at the protagonist's face, and even MC can tell that the speed and power have significantly increased. A normal person would likely end up with more than just a broken nose. The upperclassman is amused that he doesn't even flinch after taking a hit like that. He recalls that back in his first year, he was near the bottom of his class, but at least he built confidence in his physical abilities. Still, he realized he lacked talent in the usual areas, so he began searching for another path. Instead of pursuing gifts he didn't possess, he focused on what he did have. His magical abilities weren't bad, so he sought out spells he could actually learn and use. That's how he became interested in buffs. They surprised him, as the right mix can yield results far beyond simple addition. Jaryong realizes that the punch from earlier wasn't enhanced by just one spell. Several buffs were working together. Looking at his hand, the upperclassman acknowledges that this is the key. Talented people don't rely on buffs. At worst, they might need 2 or 3. He, however, requires dozens. Despite this, by his second year, his grades improved to average, and he even led his team. Yet, the top students still look down on him, as if he's cheating. That's likely why he was so excited today when one of the best first years asked to train with him. Even if she only approached him to get closer to the others, he was still happy. He wanted to share his ideas and be acknowledged, even if it made him appear like a show-off. When someone is ignored all the time, what they want most is attention. Then he notices how late it has gotten and starts to leave, offering his apologies. He attempts to apologize once more, but Jaryong tells him to stop. If Tom is truly in trouble, they still have 58 hours, and Jaryong is already looking forward to the next lesson in the morning. By Monday, everyone has gathered and is chatting about how refreshing the morning air feels after training. None of them expected to spend the entire weekend training instead of sleeping, so they essentially didn't sleep at all. Despite this, no one looks tired except for Shechyeom. With both Jaryong and Jungkook boasting A-rank stamina, Sejyeom remarks that she never realized group training could be this beneficial. If they were in the center, she believes she wouldn't be losing to Kakapapa at this moment. The upperclassman then mentions that he called a taxi and asks if anyone needs a ride toward Gangnam. He has school practice today, so he's heading that way. The protagonist raises his hand and asks to be dropped off at any station along the route, so they decide to ride together. On a weekday morning, the roads are packed regardless. A little awkwardly, the upperclassman admits that this weekend meant a lot to him as well. It was probably his best weekend since he was 5. He doesn't know if they'll meet again before the exam, as he'll be busy all month while everyone studies. So, he encourages them to do their best, especially Sairam. If she fails the final exam, it would be seriously embarrassing. Sairam turns bright red, clearly aware of the situation. He speaks to Jungkook, suggesting that they should act like they know each other. After that, he heads to the car and says goodbye to everyone. Meanwhile, Jungkook and Sairam remain awkward with each other as they wait. As the sun begins to rise, Jaryong expresses his relief that they made it without encountering any traffic. He adds that this was the best weekend he's had, and thanks to the upperclassmen, he learned a ton of new ideas, key points, and that special technique. After a moment of thought, the older student responds that it's only a theory. He admits he has never seen it used and hasn't tried it himself, so it might just be nonsense. Maybe it's just MC's imagination, but he feels like it could work. If it does, Jaryong says he could use it to communicate. When the upperclassman asks what he means, Jaryong replies that it's a long story. He promises to share the results if it works out, and even suggests they grab lunch sometime. The upperclassman agrees, but only if the protagonist gets in, as he doesn't have time for someone at a regular school. The main character appreciates this, and they part ways. When he gets home, he expresses his exhaustion and mentions that he still has to go to school, but the headmaster interrupts him immediately. Standing in the middle of the room, he states that Jaryong won't even have time to sleep. The protagonist inquires about school, but the headmaster replies that there's no point in attending as he is already preparing to transfer to the War Academy. Perfect attendance won't earn any extra points on the entrance exam, so he instructs MC to pack his things. Then he notices that the MC has learned Magic Basic, but active. Jaryong suggests that if you already know the lesson material, it's better to prepare ahead. However, the headmaster tells him he's both right and wrong. Confused, Jaryong doesn't understand, prompting the headmaster to clarify not to take it the wrong way. He isn't admitting that he messed up. He's simply stating that these weren't private lessons. This wasn't a lesson. It was a test to determine if he was truly ready and if he genuinely wanted to live like an adventurer. That's what the director intended to find out. He wanted to test him thoroughly because one thing was already clear. The protagonist wasn't as gifted as he had first believed. For a moment, the director looked completely serious, but then his expression softened. He reminded Jaryong that he had brought a few supplies, and if they ran out, he would replace them along the way. MC asked where they were headed, wondering if it was the same training ground the director used during his active days. However, the director replied that he had sold that place a long time ago. As he spoke, he fumbled with a lid, struggling to get it open. He asked what he was doing there, and the director replied that it was for him. Once the lid finally opened, Jerry-Yong saw his new weapon. The color looked a little different, but more importantly, it was smaller and fit his hand much better. The director then told him to get moving, explaining that if he cared that much about weapons, he would have plenty of time to try it out. The protagonist was excited about the upcoming challenge, but that excitement quickly turned to panic when a carnivorous ant appeared, a monster ranked at 4 stars. He kept hearing the same warning echoing in his mind. Against a 3-star monster, run if you can, and anything ranked 4 stars or above should never be faced at all. That was the lesson he had been taught. The director acknowledged that this might be true for smugglers, but not for adventurers. He added that if Jerry-Young was too scared to move, he should just admit it, and he would save him immediately. Nevertheless, the headmaster couldn't help but reflect on what he had witnessed 6 months earlier. He had seen MC's skills firsthand, but he also knew that carnivorous ants were particularly lethal for close-range fighters. If Jerry-Young hadn't improved since then, he would likely face dire consequences. The moment the director finished speaking, the ant attacked, moving so quickly that even with his full focus, he still got hurt. This was only his second time fighting a monster rated 4 stars or higher, and this one was very different from the last one he had faced. Still, the rule remained the same. Whether attacking or blocking, he couldn't afford to make a single mistake. Without backup, one slip could mean death, so he had to use everything he had to end the fight quickly. He struck twice and then positioned himself to land another blow. The most significant difference between a 4-star and a 3-star monster is intelligence. This varies by individual and species, but many monsters can navigate situations almost like humans. Some even toy with you on purpose. Just as Jerry-Young moved in, the ant turned its head into a shield to block the hit. The protagonist realized that a needle-like strike wouldn't break through, and the headmaster thought he was done for. He was about to use magic himself when Jerry-Young stepped in and split the ant clean in half with his new staff. It was far stronger than expected. When he landed, he could hardly believe the ant had vanished, and the headmaster was stunned that he had activated the staff without even knowing how it worked. The director was very surprised, and Jerry-Young knew he was capable of doing it. The headmaster then asked how he felt. Weak, dizzy, and drained, MC answered that he was breathing hard, but not truly tired, just surprised. As he lit a cigarette, the director realized he couldn't sense any magic power at all. This meant the weapon formed its blade by using stamina instead of mana. The system itself wasn't special. In fact, it was quite old. However, that kind of feature always comes with a cost, and the stamina drain from the blade should have been much worse. Yet, that strike only left him a little winded, which was remarkable. The director remarked that he was lucky. If it weren't for his bad lungs, he might have missed a very important lesson. Our hero admitted that he definitely would have lost. He knew he should have lost, even if he didn't believe his abilities were lacking. His skills were solid. In terms of pure combat strength, he was likely at the level of a gold-rank adventurer, which made Jerry-Young blush. However, the director interrupted him, questioning whether being called good was truly a form of praise. He knew 10 talented people, including his father, and more than half of them had died to monsters weaker than they were. Just then, another ant appeared and rushed at him. He recognized it as the same one he had just cut down, as it possessed super regeneration and could fully heal in almost no time. As Jerry-Young prepared to attack, he noticed that his staff had transformed into a hammer. The director observed that his stance, his swing, and even the space around him allowed the weapon to choose the best shape on its own. While that might seem minor, for someone like Jerry-Young, it was the perfect feature. Still, no matter how good the weapon was, if he didn't choose the right plan, he would lose, and time was running out. After a while, Jerry-Young was already covered in injuries and completely drained of strength. Just as the ant moved in to finish him off, the director stepped in, raised a shield, and lit another cigarette. He asked the protagonist what exactly he had been trying to do, since he couldn't even avoid the attacks, let alone defend himself. The main character replied that he believed he had destroyed every weak point. So what else was left? The director stated that the answer was simple: run. Jerry-Young hated that. He wanted to win, but the director insisted that he shouldn't just run anywhere. He had to lead it somewhere specific. If he didn't, its regeneration would stop working, and that was how he would achieve victory. At that moment, his eyes changed as he finally understood that the battlefield needed to transform. There were 3 ways to fight a carnivorous tree, and the best method was to lure it into a trap where it couldn't absorb nutrients, as that was what allowed its body to regenerate. The headmaster remarked that if Jerry-Young had dragged the tree into rocky ground or old ruins, he would have defeated it 5 times over by now. However, Jerry never even considered that option. All the protagonist knew was to find a weak spot, aim, and hit harder. He had no other method. While the headmaster explained, MC pointed out something he should have noticed. The carnivorous tree could already break through barriers. The headmaster admitted that defense wasn't his strong point, so when faced with a tree like that, he opted for a different strategy. He decided to burn the entire body using C-Crank fire magic or stronger. The director explained that this is why the carnivorous tree is classified as a 4-star monster. It's dangerous, but it has a clear weakness: fire. If you can't use fire, then stick with the first method. The carnivorous tree isn't that hard to defeat once you know how to fight it. However, before people figured that out, it was a nightmare for melee adventurers. Anyone could have guessed that fire magic would be effective against it. But the first method was even easier than that. Back then, people didn't have easy access to tools like military fire grenades. The first generation didn't even possess proper attack spells, so adventurers often paid with their lives to develop those strategies. Those were the talented individuals the director had been referring to, the ones who fell to monsters that later turned out to be simple to defeat. Then, he looked at him and brought the conversation back around, asking what it felt like the first time a monster defeated him. He stared at the ground and admitted it felt awful. Losing to a monster was nothing like losing to a person. It was ugly and humiliating. There was regret, emptiness, and the sense that he had learned nothing at all. Every adventurer experiences that at least once, along with the cost that comes with it. If you're lucky, you walk away shaken. If not, someone dies, and sometimes you find yourself blaming yourself for surviving when your partner did not. The director stood over Jaryong, assuring him that he wasn't trying to burden him with all that guilt. He just wanted him to understand that turning someone into an adventurer can come at a high cost, and more training doesn't always resolve that. Then, right after finishing his speech, he handed the protagonist a bag and instructed him to start running for hours, explaining that a dungeon's interior is never the same size as the space it occupies outside. From the outside, they all look similar, and the distance feels normal. But the real space inside can be massive. The Icarus Jungle, for example, covers 4 districts of Seoul and Yedo Island on the outside. Yet inside, it is as large as the entire Korean peninsula. Soon, the two of them arrived, and the director instructed Jaryong to look back and take it in for a moment. They had entered the dungeon once known as Syndrome, with a danger level of A. He warned him not to relax just because it looked nice. Even the lowest creatures there posed 3-star threats, and MC normally wouldn't last. For the next 2 weeks, the director would train him day and night, and after that, the daytime training would continue. But without that, he can still make it through the night. If he uses everything he has learned, he should last a month, which is exactly how long he has until the exam. All Jaryong could say was that he was sorry they only had 1 month. That month flew by, and soon it was November, the day of the Warrior Academy transfer test. Sarin felt really nervous because he hadn't replied for an entire month, and the exam was set to start at 9. She wondered if he was truly not coming. Just then, her phone rang. It was him, so she turned it once and immediately felt that something was off. Jaryong apologized for ignoring her messages, explaining that he had been somewhere with no signal for a whole month and hadn't even told her before he left. What really shook her, however, was how strange he looked. Even though the apology came late, he still asked her to forgive him for making her worry and said he would go wash up before coming back. Sarim reached out to stop him, but the moment her hand touched his back, she sensed a tremendous danger that then vanished. Jaryong quickly apologized once more. He said it had become a habit to react whenever something approached him from behind, but she reassured him not to worry about it. She understood. Once they got into the car, the protagonist explained everything. He said he really liked the new weapon and had rushed over without even bringing his things, though he still seemed a little uneasy. For Sashram, this was the first time she had ever felt an aura like that from another person, and that was the real reason she felt scared. The energy coming from him felt oddly familiar. For a split second, it felt as though a monstrous aura was emanating from Jaryong. Once they were in the car, he remarked that the new clothes fit him perfectly and felt almost weightless. Siram responded that if they had more time, they could test all the functions and fine-tune the details, noting that better gear comes with more features. MC was solely focused on the exam. Siram reminded him that concentrating on the test was better than sitting around and getting anxious. However, he cautioned MC not to let his guard down, even if it was just an exam. Jaryong added that he wasn't particularly excited about the test itself. What he really wanted to see was the hero school, which Siram had talked about for months, but he had never visited himself. The school was located in Seoul, near Namsan Mountain, standing about 270 meters above sea level. That area used to be a park, but it later transformed into one of the highest mountain regions in all of Korea, as it bordered the vast dungeon known as Igor Jungle. In truth, it became its own separate dungeon, prompting the government to collaborate with the Hunter Association 30 years ago to devise a plan for its clearance. They gathered every hunter they could find and held a briefing, with not one of them refusing to join, even though participation was voluntary. Preparing for that massive raid took nearly a year, and they even brought in astronomers and physicists for assistance. In the end, an announcement was made that Mount Drabik, formerly known as Mount Namsan, had been cleared. People celebrated because fully clearing a dungeon above A rank by world standards was a huge achievement. However, once the excitement settled, Koreans began to consider something else. Mount Drabik had multiple peaks, and the entire range was vast. The question became how to use that land until one comment suddenly ended the entire argument. Yusung suggested building a school there. Hunters had long needed a real training academy, but establishing a place that could effectively teach a large number of gifted individuals was never easy. As a result, the idea kept getting delayed. Back then, the dungeon had no owner, but the true right to it belonged to the hunters who risked their lives to clear it. Very few people knew this then, or even now. If the hunter who contributed the most had kept that right instead of giving up his claim, the hero school wouldn't exist today. And of course, that hunter was Yusung. Jur-yong mentioned that even though he had never studied there, he had always wanted to visit at least once. He joked that if they sold souvenirs, they would make a fortune. Then he asked why they were leaving Seoul when the school wasn't in the north. With a sigh, Jur-yong explained that a lot had happened while he was gone. Had he ever heard of Jace? If not, they were a famous dungeon clearing team, and some of his friends were even fans. But they all died after the lock broke and their shelter failed, apparently while a high-danger monster was nearby. It sounded awful, and at the scene, they found medicine along with the bodies of well-known individuals. Jur-yong guessed that this incident had caused a huge scandal, and Syrome confirmed he was right. Public apologies began pouring in from everywhere, even from the Hunter Association. Trust in every major group dropped significantly, and she admitted that before meeting him, she probably would have blamed the hunters as well. To calm the public, the Hunter Association announced several new projects, one of which was the changed exam site. This prompted the protagonist to inquire about the Fang Maze. Sarum explained that this was the second dungeon ever fully cleared, following Drabak Mountain, which is also ranked above A long ago. The famous dragon Wazuka resided there. Deep in a Jensen Group Labs underground forge, Zeke grumbled that he had barely managed to bring a few barrels and questioned whether their blacksmith really drank that much in such a short time. The blacksmith snapped back, telling Zeke not to complain, as he hadn't had real wine in ages and that this amount wouldn't even reach his liver. Zeke still insisted that he shouldn't drink at all. The honey wine, a very strong dwarven beverage, had been aged for 25 years. The blacksmith mentioned that even the elf folk couldn't handle it properly, emphasizing just how special it was. Then, he asked Zeke why he had come down there. Was it news about Jirate Cheng? Zeke replied, not exactly. He wanted to inquire about the Wazuka Maze, as the association had reached out to the blacksmith about it nearly 20 years ago. The blacksmith recalled that they wanted to transform the maze into a harsh training ground. He dismissed the idea as nonsense, and as a result, they kicked him out. Zeke asked why he had opposed it so strongly, but the blacksmith simply poured another barrel and remarked that elves should understand this better than anyone. Dragons become obsessed with things. Their cravings may differ, but once that obsession begins, they become fixated and refuse to let go. Wazuka, known as a lover of mazes, was considered very powerful even among dragons. He put in immense effort to make his nest confusing and deadly, employing Titan, Dwarf, Human, and Elven techniques, anything that could add to its complexity. No ordinary person could contend with a monster like that. Zeke grew uneasy, believing that all the dangerous elements had been eradicated 20 years ago with the help of dwarves and elves. However, the blacksmith completed another barrel and revealed that Wazuka had kidnapped over 1,000 dwarves. He had no idea how humans managed to catch that dragon, but he was certain it didn't happen inside the maze. Someone must have lured it out and killed it elsewhere. If the dragon had remained inside, no group could have captured it, regardless of the tools they used. And if the maze hadn't changed in 20 years, the blacksmith was convinced that was only the surface of the mystery. Something much worse had to be hidden deeper inside, and no one knew how the maze would react if people entered again. Seeing Zeke's face, the blacksmith guessed that some fools had already tampered with it. He warned that if anything happened in that maze, they would learn a hard lesson, but perhaps a clever person would be able to conquer the dungeon instead. By that time, Jerry Yong had already arrived at the training center in Feng, the former maze. Everyone was instructed to gather and then pick up their pass and contract in Zone B1. The field had been transformed into a maze featuring zones with various themes and difficulty levels, and this had already been announced. Sarum mentioned that this was the first time they were using the new test site, so no one had inside information, which might actually benefit MC. A lot more people had shown up as well. Jerryong smiled and remarked that her cousin had done a great job, as he could sense a vast number of angry spirits lurking in the stairs, ready to tear them apart. Xiaobei glanced around, aware that Anisha would likely pull something, but 20 people was far too many. Strangely, she couldn't even feel their eyes on her. At the same time, he realized his training hadn't been in vain. Over the past month, he had learned how to sense when someone was targeting him, that unsettling feeling reminiscent of a bad dream. Sokorum compared it to that unpleasant moment when you suddenly open a window on a hot summer day. For an entire month, Jaryong had risked his life in a high-level dungeon. As a result, he learned a great deal, including how to avoid danger before it could lock onto him. But this feeling was far stronger, as if he had been targeted many times over. In a moment like this, the least he could do was greet them back. No matter what, he couldn't show weakness, so he let his energy spill out, ensuring that everyone nearby could feel it. About 50 minutes before the practical exam, people gathered in the conference hall at the Fang Training Center expressing their gratitude to one another for helping make this significant event possible. Among them was the Hunter Association director, who ranked 12th in South Korea. Then Godak-su, the current headmaster, spoke up, expressing his disapproval of the rushed and reckless plan. He believed it was foolish to think that a stunt like this would win people over. According to him, people want honesty, not a flashy new event. Nevertheless, as an employee, he felt compelled to go along with the majority. He added that if anyone deserved thanks, it was the girl sitting in front of him, the one truly running the school, despite her title as board chairman of the hero school. She acknowledged that she understood how everyone felt, but asked him not to say anything that might stir up trouble. After all, the entire council had worked on this for a long time. Even so, nobody really believed it, as everyone knew that connections had influenced much of the decision-making. Then, a bald man in a fancy red robe chimed in, stating that they were making too big a deal out of this, considering it wasn't even the main exam. It was just an extra test for a select group of top students, so he didn't understand the outrage. Others quickly silenced him, telling him to sit quietly, as if age had made him forget what he was like 30 years ago. They reminded him that none of the kids outside deserved to be looked down upon. Hearing this, the girl warned that if anyone started another argument, she was prepared to respond in kind, as the headmaster and the board already had enough conflict. Everyone present knew those tensions would eventually explode. They just didn't expect it to happen in this way. Then an applicant who had nothing to do with their argument arrived, and they all felt his presence at once. Every eye turned toward the street. At that moment, the same old man stepped out of the office and began talking with another teacher. He told him that another teacher should be the real target of criticism, as there wasn't a hunter in Korea who didn't know the association chairman was essentially someone's lapdog. He then asked Teacher Kang if that sounded too harsh. Kang admitted that the wording was a bit strong, but the old man could tell he agreed. Once people gain power, they always want to use all of it. Still, he wondered if they had gone too far, because every school should be striving to win graduates fairly by offering the best fit. Instead, some places were attracting students who only cared about perks rather than effort or skill, focusing instead on connections, money, and fame. The old man warned that in a few years there might not be any young hunters left with real promise. Too many people were satisfied with easy rewards, and later, they grew into adults chasing nothing but external benefits. A fish trapped in a well cannot fight against the sky that feeds it. He even suspected that this exam was initiated by a single request from the chairman, so most of the attendees today would likely be relatives or friends. He asked Teacher Kang once more if he was being too harsh. He expressed that it wasn't enough for their own students to have already left. Now, there was pressure on those who remained. Did that mean he and the entire school meant nothing? Kang reassured him not to worry, and the old man agreed. Then, he mentioned the strange aura that everyone had felt. They laughed it off, saying it might at least make things a little more interesting, since a guy like that would be hard to ignore. Perhaps he was acting this way on purpose, which only added to the humor. The old man even encouraged that student to join in. As a director, he might not express it openly, but he hadn't felt this eager to test a student in a long time. Soon after the teachers wrapped up, the students were briefed on the exam topic, finding and retrieving a treasure. To pass, they had to locate a chest inside the dungeon, recover the treasure, and bring it back out. This was all explained on a giant screen 30 minutes before the test. Jerry Yong listened closely, realizing the rules were much simpler than he had expected. He had anticipated a complicated scoring system. He also signed a waiver in case he got injured. The key point was that even if everyone succeeded, treasures would still remain in the dungeon. There was no limit to how many could pass, but if even a quarter of the group entered, that would already amount to over 100 people. The teacher concluded by mentioning that there was more to explain later, but for now, the class could head to the exam field where the equipment was waiting. Jerry Young felt annoyed that he couldn't use the phone he had turned in, but he was confident that he and Siram would meet face to face soon enough. Just then, he spotted two huge guys blocking another student. The boy explained that his leg was hurt, causing him to move slowly, and he had bumped into them by mistake. The two looked ready to start beating him up. Xiao Beiyang stepped in and told them to knock it off. Naturally, the pair acted confident, knowing they had the advantage of size and numbers. Once the protagonist lowered his aura and expressed that they were getting on his nerves, he made it clear that the law was the only thing holding him back and that things might be different inside the exam. After they backed off, he picked up the boy's book and handed it back. The student claimed he didn't need assistance, but Xiao Beiyang helped him regardless and wished him luck on the test. Noticing the prep book in his hand, Xiao realized that Piao Dujin was taking this seriously. At 18 years old, Piao had ranked second in the overall freshman assessment last year. By then, everyone had gathered at the maze entrance in the training center. With only 10 minutes left before the exam began, they instructed everyone to follow the guidelines and move to their assigned entrances. What stood out to Xiao Beiyang was how much it all felt like a sci-fi movie, as they had to step into strange capsule-like pods. Once inside, they were informed that the doors would open when the countdown ended, signaling the start of the exam. The capsules felt like elevators, and each person received a tactical bracelet that tracked their time, condition, and location. Only 5 seconds remained. The Fang Labyrinth, once known as the Baskin Abyss, had raised doubts among many hunters about its safety as a training ground. But even they had no idea what this maze could truly conceal. It followed its own rules and deceived anyone who attempted to navigate it. Then, Xiao Beiyang sensed that something was off. The elevator was behaving strangely. The system suddenly blared, urging everyone to exit the maze, warning of an emergency, and that the internal structure was changing. At last, the truth emerged. The maze wasn't a test site, but a predator, consuming them as prey. These people had unwittingly walked into a dragon maze with no master. If you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more exciting content.